Staying in a place where you shouldn't be never leads to anything good. It's not my fault this time. I stopped at a traffic light when a man stopped next to me and signaled for me to roll down the window. "You have a flat tire," he informed me. Grateful for the help, I turned into the parking lot of the nearest store on the right. When I got out of the car to inspect the damage, I saw that a screw was sticking out of the tire tread, which was slowly releasing air. I was just unlucky. What should I do now? I decided to stop and buy a can of sealant, but when I returned and pulled the screw out of the tire, I quickly realized that this was a mistake, as the air began to come out with a hiss. In a panic, I quickly put the screw back in and inflated the tire at the nearest gas station in the parking lot. When I was no more than 15 miles from home, I checked the tire several times, ready to add more sealant if necessary. Driving up to the house, which was about 5 miles away, I noticed in the driver's side mirror that the tire was dangerously flat. Desperate to find a solution, I went to the store but found that they did not have a pump available. It's time to test the sealant for durability. When I inserted it, a small amount of green mucus leaked out of it. It was expected that the sealant would do its job, as the hissing of the escaping air stopped. Just as I was about to get back into the car, I saw a pickup truck heading my way. This massive car had huge tires and was so tall that it required a ladder to climb into it. I've seen this pickup truck before. The door swung open. A tall blonde man appeared, dressed in cowboy boots and a large belt with a bright buckle. I couldn't help but laugh, but my amusement quickly evaporated. The passenger door swung open, revealing a stunning woman with dark hair. It was Rachel, my wife, whom I have been married to for 18 years. Surprisingly, they didn't even pay attention to my presence while I was sitting on the sidelines in my inconspicuous official car. When they entered the store hand in hand, she burst out laughing, which made my stomach hurt. I felt as if I had been hit, unable to breathe or move. I stood there, stunned, and remembered where I had seen this man before. He was Rachel's colleague at the psychiatric clinic, where she worked as an office manager and he was a social worker. When I saw their clinic's truck on the street, I wondered what Rachel had to do with it. At that moment, his name escaped me. It finally dawned on me: Jerry Garner. The question was, why wasn't Rachel at work? I was going to find out. I went back to the car and waited. He helped her sit down as they left the store carrying glasses of coffee. They roared off, and I followed them at a respectful distance. They drove up to our house and he pulled into the garage. I waited for 30 minutes, nervous at the thought of Rachel. It took 2 hours before the door finally opened and they walked past me. I quickly hid behind a folder of documents, hoping that they would not notice me. Rachel was sitting across from him, completely engrossed in her conversation. Rachel wouldn't be available until 5, and it was only 2:30 in the afternoon. I had plenty of time. I needed to go inside and see what I could find. I was supposed to pick up my 15-year-old daughter Toby at 4 o'clock, but I had no idea what to say to her. When I entered the house, it was eerily quiet, except for the dripping water from the faucet in Toby's bathroom, which I needed to fix. The only sound was the slight hum of the air conditioning vents. Everything was waiting, but I couldn't get rid of the feeling that something was wrong. When I went upstairs, I found Toby's bed neatly made, which further enhanced the mystery of the quiet house. The bed linen was fresh. My heart started pounding like a stone. I leaned back against the wall and slid to the floor. I felt numb. There was only one rational explanation in my head. I sat there for about 30 minutes. My mind was in free mode. I couldn't sort out my thoughts and felt like I was drugged. My stomach rumbled. I got up and opened the Sprite. I felt hot and sweaty. I went back to the bathroom and rummaged in the dressing table for a washcloth. I soaked it in the sink and rinsed my face with cold water, feeling a little lighter. While wiping my face, I noticed the wet floor in the shower. They must have taken a shower before leaving for work. This realization came to me when I returned to the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed from which my wife and her lover had just left. This thought made me jump with horror. After all, it was a scene of betrayal and deception. I had no idea what to do. I was going to divorce Rachel. It was quite obvious. I didn't know where to start at all. I didn't know any lawyers. I had no idea what to do, and I had to pick Toby up from school. What am I going to tell her? I walked to the car feeling like I'd been drinking for 10 days in a row. My head was throbbing and I looked like I was being warmed by death. I was in no condition to drive, but I couldn't keep Toby waiting. I suddenly realized that she was the only one in my life I could really rely on. My baby was fine. I was going to take care of her. No matter what I did, I had to take her opinion into account. When I entered the queue of cars, I saw that she was waiting at the door of the school. She was walking down the sidewalk to the car, so beautiful that my heart ached. Toby had her mother's hair and skin. Her appearance was dark and reminiscent of the Mediterranean. Her eyes were the most incredible I had ever seen, a mesmerizing mix of dark brown, like her mother's, with shades of gold and green. The doctor called them nutty, but they didn't look like anything I'd ever seen. Tall like me, she had long brown legs that complemented her beauty. Opening the back door and throwing her backpack inside, she was about to kiss me, but suddenly froze in place. "Are you feeling well? Something happened? Is Mom okay? What's going on, Dad?" Her voice trembled with fear. I had to calm her down. "I'm fine, honey," I replied. "No one was injured or ill. But I need to talk to you, Toby. Let's go to the park. I just need to hug you and talk to you for a minute, okay? Please don't ask any more questions until we get there, okay?" "Okay, Dad. But you're scaring me," she said softly. "I know, honey." I assured her that everything would be fine, although I wasn't completely sure of it myself. A few minutes later, we arrived at the park, where I spent countless hours rocking her on a swing. Watching her, I couldn't help but wonder if my life wasn't destined to be filled only with memories of happy times. We walked to the nearest bench, and she took my hand, interlacing our fingers as we walked. It was a familiar gesture that she had been making since she was a child. With great difficulty, I got to a place where we could sit down. I couldn't find the words to start a conversation. "Just tell me, Dad," she urged. "I can handle it." "I'm not sure I can," I admitted. Words poured out of me, describing everything I had witnessed and the emotions that overwhelmed me. Tears were streaming down my face as I spoke. Throughout it all, she held my hand, silently supporting me. When I finally stopped talking, she hugged me, comforting me in a moment of vulnerability. "Dad, that doesn't sound good," she said. "We should go home and ask Mom about it. It all depends on what she tells us. I know what awaits us, but we don't have all the information. We need to talk to her." I kissed the top of her head, proud of her bravery. She pulled on my arm, urging me to stand up. "Do you want to drive?" I suggested. Her eyes were shining with delight. Having just received permission to study, she felt a cloud flicker in her beautiful eyes. But it quickly disappeared when she carefully drove home, noticing Rachel's car parked in the garage. When she entered the house, she greeted everyone with hugs and kisses, expecting that she didn't care at all. She didn't seem to be the crook I thought she was. Maybe she's just a talented actress. Or maybe I completely misunderstood the situation. "Do you two want to take something with you for the evening?" she asked, offering to treat us. "We need to talk to Mom," Toby said. "Of course. Is everything all right, dear?" I replied. "I'm not sure," Toby replied. "Let's talk and figure it out." When we entered the room, I settled down on the couch next to Toby, leaving Rachel sitting in her favorite but unattractive chair. "What's going on?" she asked, her face devoid of any worry. "How was your day?" I asked, following her with a curious look. Everything is as usual, she replied. One of the representatives of the pharmacy brought lunch from a basket with onions. There were a lot of people, and I hardly had a free minute. Why are you asking this? So, you've been sitting in the office all day? Toby asked. Of course, she replied. What kind of questions are these? So, you weren't at the house with Jerry Garner this afternoon? I asked. Her face paled. Of course not, she said. Are you accusing me of something, Oliver? I saw you, I told her. What? You didn't see anything? Now she was stuttering. What are you trying to do? Toby asked. He's lying, Toby. I've been in the office all day. You can ask the angel. Toby shook her head. No, I don't think he's lying, Mom. Toby said, I think you're lying. I'm not going to ask an angel. She'll lie for you. I think I'll call David Jones. He's your boss, right? I don't think he would lie for you. What's his number? Rachel said, I'll have him call you tomorrow. What are you two doing? Are you trying to trick me or something? Do you think you can just come here and try to trip me up? What are you accusing me of? I think she thought the best defense was a good offense. I think you set yourself up, I told her. You lied, Rachel. All three of us know that you lied. Why are you doing this? I could see the wheels turning in her head. Okay, I was here, she said. That's why I didn't want to tell you. I knew you'd give me a third-degree interrogation and try to accuse me of something. No one has accused you of anything, Toby said. Now I'm accusing you of something. You tried to make me believe that my father was a liar. You tried to make him look like a liar to cover up your lies. What are you lying about, Mom? Are you having an affair with that idiot? You don't even know him, Rachel said. Why did you say he was an idiot? I've met him twice, Toby said. His gaze makes me want to take a relaxing bath, but it's nothing. Are you romantically involved with him? Toby asked. Rachel's eyes darted nervously from one place to another, resembling the gaze of a cornered animal. I didn't want it to happen like this, she admitted after a moment of silence. I wasn't ready. What wasn't I ready for? Toby asked. I just couldn't help but fall in love with Jerry, she confessed and looked at me apologetically. I'm sorry, Oliver. It just happened that way. We spend a lot of time together at work. He is my soulmate, the missing part that complements me. Our bond was undeniable, and we fell in love with each other. I planned to tell you about it when the time came, but circumstances forced us to do it. As soon as we get a divorce, we'll get married. I am very sorry that you misunderstood everything so much. Toby, it's going to be okay. You can still see your dad whenever you want, and Jerry has a great place by the lake, and he also has a daughter who likes you, and we'll all be happy together. Don't worry, everything will work out. Toby practically exploded. I'm not going to live with this jerk. He'll probably sneak into my bedroom at night to molest me. You're right. I will see my father whenever I want, because I will live with him. But I won't see you anymore. How could you? With that, Toby left. Rachel turned to me and said, She's going to be fine. Jerry's a great guy, Oliver. I think you'll get along with him. I'm sorry, but I need to put my own happiness first. Jerry brings me joy, and that's all that matters to me. I was shocked by her words. Who was this woman in front of me? It seemed to me that her true identity had passed on to someone else. I had no desire to engage in conversation with a woman who expected instability and danger. Whatever you say, Rachel, I replied calmly. When are you planning to move out? I asked. When will you leave? I considered her words. But I have nowhere to go. Jerry is married, and there's nothing we can do until we tell his wife. We'll all have to get divorced and see how the settlement goes before we figure out what to do. No, you're moving out, I told her. I'll give you 3 days. Her jaw dropped. What the hell are you talking about? You can't kick me out of my own house. If anything, you should be the one to move out. You're forgetting something, I said. This is my home. It belonged to me before I met you. I paid for the house and owned it before our marriage. This is not a family property, but exclusively mine. My name is on the document, not yours. That's why you'll have to move out of the house." When asked where she was going, I answered indifferently, suggesting that she might be staying at a motel known for her infidelity. "That's where you fallen women do your dirty work, right?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I'm in a lot of pain, Oliver," she said. "You don't have to call me names. I wasn't trying to fall in love with Jerry. It just happened that way. We just found a common language, and I realized that I had to be with him. I wasn't trying to hurt you." "Oh, you just bumped into me by accident," I said. "It's like falling down while running with a stick in your hand and gouging out your eye. Mom always warned me about this. Now I understand how it happens. Well, that's all right then. It was an accident." "And there's no need to be so sarcastic about it," she said. "Why can't you just accept the fact that we love each other, Oliver?" "I don't know, Rachel," I said. "Maybe it has something to do with the fact that when I left this morning, you told me that you loved me, and now you're telling me that you love him. I guess I'm just a little confused." "I've always loved you, Oliver," she said. "But now I love Jerry. I know it's not easy to accept," she continued. I nodded, trying to make sense of her words. "For the last 18 years, you've been telling me every day that you love me, Rachel. I thought that was why we got married," I said. "I guess I was wrong," I replied. "No, we were in love," she insisted, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. "You have 3 days, Rachel," I said firmly. "If you don't leave within 3 days, I'll ask the sheriff to evict you and throw your stuff on the road," I said. "Please, Oliver, it doesn't have to end like this. We can still be friends. Jerry wants to be your friend too. We have to think about Toby. I have already said that you are dear to me, and I do not want to lose you as a friend. We've been through a lot together. You shouldn't just drop everything." I looked at her, feeling a wave of sadness and sadness wash over me. It seemed to me that anger was boiling inside me, displacing all calmness. "You must be crazy, Rachel," I hissed. "Be friends with you and that idiot? I do not think so. Tell him that if he ever sees me, he should run as fast as possible. As for you, you're the enemy, Rachel. You have 3 days to disappear from my life forever." "I'll talk to a lawyer tomorrow so we can speed up the divorce process." I said that before heading into the bedroom, leaving her behind while she fussed. Her words meant nothing to me. While I was moving her things into the spare bedroom, she followed me, muttering something about friends. There were too many clothes for me to carry, so I just threw them on top of her, carried an armful to the spare bedroom and hung them in the closet. She kept following me. She stood talking and watching me for a while. But when she went to hang up her clothes, I took the opportunity to leave and locked the bedroom door. I heard her footsteps as she walked down the hallway, but eventually she left. A few minutes later, Toby texted me, asking if I was okay. I replied, "Yes, kitten, and you?" She replied, "No, but I will." I reassured her with a message, "Okay, I love you." I also asked her to contact me if she needed anything. "Can you give me a ride to school in the morning?" she asked. I didn't want to go with her in the car. "Okay," I replied. I went to bed and lay there for a while thinking about my next steps. I must have fallen asleep around 3 because the alarm clock on my phone woke me up. I got out of bed, took a shower, and called my boss. I informed him of my divorce and asked for a few days off. He was understanding and told me to take as much time as I needed. After the call, I made myself a cup of coffee. After drinking a cup or two of coffee, I made breakfast for Toby and myself. Right on schedule, she came downstairs, looked radiant as always, and began to eat greedily. Rachel soon joined us, poured herself a cup of coffee, and tried to start a conversation, but we ignored her. When it was time to take Toby to school, Rachel asked if she was ready, but received only a blank look. Toby turned to me and said, "Am I ready, Dad?" I rattled the keys and she grabbed her backpack, signaling that she was ready to go. You can act like 2-year-olds if it makes you feel good, Rachel said, picking up her purse and taking one last look at us before leaving. I drove Toby to school and she kissed me goodbye before she left. As I walked her out, I thought about my friend Dan, who had recently gone through a divorce. I decided to call him and ask about a lawyer, but Dan did not recommend his lawyer and instead offered me the services of his wife's lawyer. After he told me that name, I looked up the phone number. When I dialed the number, a woman answered, who put me on standby after I explained the purpose of my call. She agreed to meet later that day, and I followed the standard procedures. Since investments were at stake, my options were limited. I decided to reduce the credit card limit to $500 to prevent a possible increase in her bills. Although it wasn't perfect, I refused to finance her project. My first meeting with Elizabeth Baxter didn't start quite smoothly. She made some wrong assumptions, which I had to correct before we could get to work. She hinted that I had left Rachel for a younger woman, but I quickly brought her up to speed. I informed her that Rachel was actually having an affair with her colleague, who was married, and they were planning to divorce in order to be together. Elizabeth apologized and stated that she could not represent the interests of a person who commits such acts. I felt creepy, and I couldn't look at my reflection in the mirror. "I understand," I replied. "We have a daughter. I want to minimize the consequences for her. Do you think it's possible for me to get custody?" "It's possible," she replied. "Theoretically, any parent has an equal chance of getting custody. But in reality, fathers rarely get custody, especially of their daughters. How old is she? And does she want to live with you?" "She's 15, I replied, "and she agreed to live with me." "This will be crucial for the court's decision," she explained. "In this jurisdiction, children aged 14 and older have the right to choose, but the preferences of younger children are taken into account. If the child were much younger, his opinion would not have such weight. The fact that a 15-year-old teenager wants to live with you and already has a primary place of residence with you should be an important factor in making a custody decision. This shouldn't be a difficult issue to solve. Just do your best," I reassured her. As I drove home, I thought about what steps I should take next. I had a plan, but I had to make sure it didn't go beyond the law. I couldn't lose Toby, so I couldn't take any chances. I had to think about what legal options there are. It was necessary to set fire to houses carefully so as not to accidentally damage their property. I needed to think carefully and plan my actions. It seemed to me that his wife was not aware of the situation, so the first step would be to inform her. It was necessary to make a list of steps to be taken, and in the end, I realized that I had to inform her family about the situation. They adored Toby, so the first task was to tell them the news, but I didn't know what to do better. Informing our friends was also a top priority, and I decided that I could create enough noise on social media so that they would not remain indifferent. Notifying everyone was top of my to-do list. She had access to our family Facebook account, so I got to know him by twirling it in my hands and using the messenger function. After doing a little research on the internet, I found that Jerry's wife used a similar approach. I took screenshots of some of the photos and posted a message on Rachel's page about our divorce. I mentioned that she found her soulmate Jerry by posting a picture of him. After changing my password and logging out, I felt rested. I couldn't help but wonder how long it would be before her friends and family started contacting her. I was hoping that Jerry's wife would not stay away. Even though I didn't know her, I felt guilty about the drama that was about to unfold. I decided to call my mom, knowing that in my place, she would prefer to find out the truth, rather than remain in the dark. The conversation did not go as smoothly as I had hoped, but my mother assured me that she would inform my father and that they would always be there for me. I decided to let Rachel break the news to her parents, because I didn't want to be the cause of a possible breakup in their relationship. Despite my uncertainty, I knew that in the end, I had to figure out what to tell them. The message that your daughter is a fallen woman prone to infidelity was far from ideal. It was almost obvious that whoever handed me over would face a backlash. I didn't have to wait long. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Rachel's number appeared on my phone. When I answered, she immediately got angry, calling me a jerk. I couldn't help but feel satisfied with her initial reaction. It looks like you couldn't help but cause trouble, couldn't you? I know you blocked me on Facebook. You need to sort out this mess. Jerry's wife is not aware of the situation. Are my friends constantly calling me to find out what happened? And are my parents aware of all the events? I'm warning you, Oliver, stop this nonsense. I told her she wasn't my boss. What? Are you acting like a child? She told me. That's enough, Oliver, she insisted. Why? I asked. You should be happy that everyone can get to know you and your partner. Are you ashamed that people will realize that you're cheating, Rachel? She hesitated. She suddenly realized the absurdity of her words. Oliver, please put it away, she said. This shouldn't have happened. I informed her. The moment you cheated, you lost all say in how events would unfold. All rights to my attention, respect, or even basic politeness have sunk into oblivion. You're the enemy now, Rachel. Accept it, I said before ending the conversation. The phone rang again, but I decided to ignore it. It was time to go after Toby. I told her about the results of my conversation with Elizabeth Baxter, and although she was glad that she would most likely be with me, on the whole she was not happy at all. Well, we're going to have to handle this as best we can, she said. Dad, I never want to stay in the same house with this jerk without you. Please do everything you can to make sure that doesn't happen, okay? I'll do my best, I assured her. We bought pizza on the way home, and I was savoring the second slice when the phone rang. It was Bob. Rachel's father called, and I was terribly afraid of this conversation. I told Toby who it was, and she told me to put it on speaker. He got straight to the point. Oliver, I do not know exactly what is going on, but Rachel came here last night and asked if she could stay with us. Could you explain how this happened? Did you ask her? I asked. She said you kicked her out. Well, I kicked her out. But did she tell you why? No, she said she was going to explain, but she wasn't ready. You really don't want to wait for her to explain everything? I asked. Can't you just tell me? He answered. She's having an affair with Jerry Garner, her colleague. He's getting divorced and she was planning to divorce me. They're dating, I said. What? This is crazy, Oliver. How did you figure that out? He asked. I caught them together yesterday, I confessed. And she told me herself. Are you sure you heard correctly? He asked. Toby intervened in the conversation. Hello, Grandpa. I listened carefully. Dad is talking to you on speakerphone. There is no misunderstanding here. I'm really sorry, Grandpa. I love you. She was sobbing and he could hear it. When he spoke again, his voice cracked. Don't cry, my beloved granddaughter. Please be strong, okay? I love you and Grandma too. I'll try to talk to your mom. Oliver, are you still here? Yes, I'm sorry, Bob. Don't worry about Toby. You are her grandparents and nothing will change that. I know that you love Rachel and you will do what you have to do. I respect you more than I can put into words. I hope you won't hate me when it's over. This will never happen, he said. I'll understand what's going on. Call me if you need anything. It went better than I feared. Everything happens. You're doing your best. There is no need to describe in detail what happened during the divorce process. Many people are familiar with those who have experienced a similar situation. It was a long and painful process that did not portend any improvement. Rachel was expected to be in a daze, believing that she would get custody of Toby. But this did not happen. Miss Baxter turned out to be as competent as she was in the rumors. In the end, I got full custody because Toby decided to live with me. and after a personal conversation with Toby, the judge decided that Rachel would have unlimited visitation rights, but not those that would allow Toby to be alone with her and Jerry Garner. In any case, this situation is no longer a problem. His wife divorced him, and it seems that the idea that they were soulmates was perhaps exaggerated, at least from his point of view. Just 2 weeks after I found out about their affair, he was already courting a new one. It was expected that all their grandiose plans would quickly collapse. It took 7 months for the divorce to be finalized, but then Rachel changed her mind. I was shocked when, during the second court session, she asked for a consultation, despite the fact that I or Miss Baxter could not object to anything. It turned out that she was not relevant to the case, and the judge ordered that she not be taken into account. We were scheduled for 8 to 10 sessions. The therapist was an eccentric old hippie. In the first session, we were asked to talk about our goals. Rachel's goal was complex and detailed. She emphasized the importance of her happiness and insisted that she meant no harm. My goal, on the contrary, was more straightforward. "My goal is to end this," I said. Our spiritual mentor frowned. "Mr. Barrowman, aren't you interested in working on your problems that have brought your marriage to such a state?" "I'm sorry, Mr. Rodman, but it wasn't my problems that brought my marriage to this state, and I'm really not interested in working on them. I am quite happy with my problems and intend to die with them." Rachel was just as horrified as Mr. Guru. "Oliver, are you ready to resolve the issue that we left unresolved or not?" "I don't know," I replied, not daring to boldly intervene. "I'll tell you straight out. I'm not interested in going back to the past or trying to fix something. I'm only here because the court ordered it. I will do whatever the court requires of me, and then we will proceed with the divorce. That's my plan. Do you understand where I left off?" "I can inform the judge that you refused to cooperate, and this may lead to you being held in contempt of court," Mr. Guide warned. "I'm not sure about that," I replied. "If you come to the judge again and lie, these sessions are recorded. My lawyer can subpoena the records and prove your dishonesty. I'm here, I'm doing whatever you say. You asked me about my goals, I told you what they are. You see, I'm cooperating," I replied. He blushed in response. "The judge probably thought that you would try to settle your differences," he said. I reminded him that I was responsible only for my actions, not for the judge's assumptions. He tried to complicate the situation by assigning me tasks such as spending time with Rachel, who did her best to change my mind. "Oliver, what do I need to do to get you to reconsider the divorce and fix the situation?" Rachel asked. "It will require divine intervention," I replied. She waited patiently for me to explain, but I didn't say anything. "What exactly do you mean by God's intervention?" she finally asked. "If you can find a way to turn back time and make Jerry disappear, then maybe it will work," I replied. "But other than that, I do not know that anyone other than God has such abilities." "Maybe you have some hidden talents that you haven't shared with me, Rachel?" I teased. As we continued our conversation, I couldn't help but mention her extraordinary ability to attract men with her feminine charm. The tedious exercise routine turned into meaningless singing until it finally came to an end. We returned to the court, where the judge asked about our progress. "Your Honor, my client does not intend to remain married to Rachel," Baxter said. "We want to finalize the divorce as soon as possible." After thinking about it, the judge granted our request, and just 10 days later the official decision was delivered by mail. Toby often visited her mother, whom she adored, and spent a lot of time with her grandparents, whom she also loved very much. From time to time, Rachel offered Toby classes together, but it never compares to the bond she shared with her friends, especially with her close friend Sabrina. Sabrina, a petite blonde, expected Toby to become her favorite companion and practically a member of the family. She was as adorable as a newborn kitten and had a sweet personality. I was happy with them, and they began to involve me in their activities. One of their favorite activities was water skiing. We had a boat, and when the summer holidays started, we spent most of Saturday at one of the nearby lakes. On Monday, they asked me if we could go to the lake for the weekend, take our van and stay there until Sunday evening. Since my social calendar wasn't too busy, I decided this was a great plan. Toby and Sabrina spent a week planning, and on Thursday we packed everything they asked for. On Friday afternoon, a new red Jeep Cherokee pulled up to our driveway, and Sabrina quickly got out of the car. A woman who almost looked like her got out from the driver's side, and Toby ran up to greet her, throwing herself into the arms of a stranger. "Dad, this is Julie," she said. "She's Sabrina's mom, and I know you haven't met her yet." Julie held out her hand. "Hi, Oliver. The girls told me all the details about you. I am very grateful for the invitation to join you this weekend. To be honest, I'm a little jealous that they spend so much time with you and not with me." She smiled playfully, and I understood where her daughter's charm came from. I glanced at Toby, who gave me a warning look. My nerves started to give out, and I knew when to back off. When I noticed Sabrina's gaze, she raised an eyebrow, which further increased my excitement. "This weekend is going to be unforgettable." Julie was stunned by my words. "We always have a great time," I said, leaving her speechless. She quickly figured it out, looked between me and the girls, and then exclaimed, "Oh my God, you didn't know, did you?" Before she could say anything else, she was overwhelmed by a flurry of hugs, kisses, and reassurances from the girls. Sabrina assured her, "Please, Mom, don't worry about it. We're going to have a lot of fun." Toby replied, "It's okay, Julie. Dad will love you as much as I do, and he's a great guy." Toby was thrilled. "Look how tightly he's holding on." She managed to break free and turn to face them. "Both of you, go and wait on the porch while I talk to Oliver," she ordered. They hesitated, but she insisted, "Now." Taking her words to heart, they quickly obeyed. "I'm really sorry, Oliver. I didn't know about it," she admitted. "I'll make a decision and leave." She sighed. "What an awkward situation." She looked small and embarrassed, which prompted me to step forward and hug her. Initially tense, she eventually relaxed. "Yes, it's awkward," I admitted. "They can be quite mischievous, but we both know they're okay." I guessed that she was single, to which she looked up at me and giggled. She was undeniably charming. "No, that's not the point," she replied. "Do you really think so?" I nodded in agreement. "That's the problem. You packed your bags and left for the weekend. The trip to the lake will be amazing. I'm not a villain, as you've already heard from Toby. Let's make a deal. It will be nice. Maybe we'll add a little spice to everything. Do you agree?" Stepping back, she looked at the impatient faces of the girls and agreed, "Yes, let's do it." I gave them a thumbs up, and they eagerly jumped to their feet and hurried to join us. Toby's joyful voices could be heard in the distance. I stepped up to them and grabbed one of the girls by the arms. "Girls, that wasn't very kind," I vowed. Sabrina looked at me and giggled in her best Skeletor way. "I'm not kind," she said, causing us all to burst out laughing. They were too pure and innocent for me to tell them off. "We see what you're up to," I warned them. "Stop it. I'm serious. You can't just dance around this problem trying to improve the lives of others." One of the girls said, "But I love Julie." Toby protested that she didn't know how to introduce me to her. I reassured her by saying that she could just tell me. She looked sad for a moment, but I reassured her, saying that everything was fine and it wouldn't happen again. She immediately perked up when Sabrina pulled on my hand, urging me to go because she couldn't wait. "It's going to be great, Oliver. You'll see," she said. Julia laughed and said that this should be the limit of what is really cool, and noted that we are losing daylight. We took 2 bags from her Jeep and got into the car. Having secured the boat and stopped for propane, we set off on our way to the lake. Julie got in the front seat next to me and we drove for half an hour. While we were chatting and getting to know each other, the girls turned on terrible music via Bluetooth connections. I found out that Julie owns her own insurance company and works as a financial planner. Looking at her during the conversation, I couldn't help but notice how charming she was. I expected Sabrina to look like Julia when she was younger, but in fact she looked much younger than me, being 3 years younger. She had light brown hair cascading down to her waist and a beautiful tan. Huge brown eyes, high cheekbones, and a heart-shaped face with a small widow's hump on a wide forehead gave her a youthful appearance. Despite the fact that she was wearing jeans and a button-down shirt, she had a slim and graceful figure. I didn't want to laugh at her, so I ignored her until we got to the lake. We were allowed to park the boat, then the van. They pushed me outside while they were changing, and in the meantime, I turned on the water. They came out when they finished changing. I went inside, put on my swimming trunks and a t-shirt, and we were ready. We took a cooler full of drinks and hit the road. We ran a couple of miles on the lake, and they were ready to ride. The girls dropped their long t-shirts, revealing their usual awkward figures. But Julia was different. She radiated confidence and grace. I called her slim, but in fact she was petite, but undeniably feminine. When she turned to watch the other girls leave through the back door, my breath caught in my throat. The bikini accentuated her graceful buttocks, small, round, elastic, and sticking out like a perfect shelf. When she turned to meet my gaze, a smile played on her lips, and she winked at me. Despite her small breasts, everything about her was perfectly proportioned. Her smile was soothing, and even her teeth were flawless. I grinned, realizing that she really was perfection in miniature. She sat down next to me, wanting to chat and keep an eye on the girls at the same time. We enjoyed 3 hours of skiing, with Julie showing off her impressive skills, both on the water and at the helm of the boat. It was hard for me to keep up with her and the girls, but I persevered despite the difficulties. When we returned to the park, the girls changed into dressing gowns. Although there was a wonderful stove in the van, they insisted on cooking outside. We set up a camping stove, and I lit a fire in the barbecue on our property. I cooked sausages, and they boiled and boiled potatoes and onions, opened cans of pork and beans. We took some food with us from home, but there's something about camping food that always tastes better. Sitting at the picnic table provided by the club, we quickly became close and felt as if we had been friends for many years. The girls started calling Julia Jules. She liked it, and she even gave me the nickname Ollie. The other girls kept pointing out that Jules wasn't married, and I finally asked her why. I mean, you're amazing, funny, and smart. You have your own successful business. Why hasn't anyone knocked you down yet? There was a moment of silence before she finally replied. Well, the main reason is Sabrina, Jules confessed. I was young and stupid, Ollie. It was my last year of college, and I thought I'd found the love of my life. I realized I was pregnant just a week before I graduated from college. I wasn't very unhappy. We discussed the idea of getting married after graduating from college. But it looks like this plan has failed, since you're talking about it in the past tense, I said. Unfortunately, this is not destined to come true. Just 3 days after I confided in Brad, I found out that he had been unfaithful to me for a month. I broke off the relationship and moved on without looking back. With Sabrina's arrival, my social life took a back seat for a while. After that, I devoted myself to developing my business. Finally, after taking a deep breath and thinking about the idea of dating, I came to realize that I was blessed with a special gift from God. This person occupied all my thoughts, and I couldn't imagine my life without her. I expressed my feelings by saying that Toby is my top priority and that she is very important to my well-being. She gently put her hand on my shoulder, understanding and acknowledging the deep connection between Toby and me. She claimed Toby was telling Sabrina and her everything. "I'm sorry, Ollie. Life can be hard sometimes." We both sighed. Looking up, we noticed that two pairs of supportive and affectionate eyes were looking at us. They were talking quietly, sitting on folding chairs under the awning. "I'm very worried about your daughter," I confessed. "She almost feels like a member of my family because she spends a lot of time with us." "She cares about you too," she replied. "The other day she confessed to me that you look like the father she never had." Looking into her big brown eyes full of tears, I gently wiped a tear from her small brown cheek. "She's a wonderful girl," I said. "I think her mother must be an extraordinary woman to raise such a strong and brave daughter alone." She smiled through her tears, stood up, kissed me on the cheek, and returned to the group of girls. After a wonderful weekend spent together, when she was preparing to leave our house, I went to the window of her car and nervously asked, "Jules, will you go on a date with me next Friday?" Sabrina and Toby squealed with joy, and Jules beamed with her radiant smile. "What time is it?" she asked. "At 6 o'clock, I replied. "We'll have dinner and then we'll do something interesting. Does that sound good?" Jules agreed and even suggested that Toby stay with Sabrina while we went for a walk. It was a tempting offer, and of course I agreed. After she kissed me on the cheek and they left, Toby was waiting for me at the entrance. "So," she asked, "did you ask her out? Did you kiss her?" I hugged her and playfully slapped her on the shoulder. "Yes, I did, and it's none of your business," I replied. She screamed, making the same sound as Sabrina. "I knew it. She's perfect for you, Dad. I love her so much, and Sabrina is like a sister to me." I shrugged, wondering what would happen next. "Toby, it's okay. You can't make it happen. Please stop playing matchmaking." She put her head on my chest. "I understand, Dad, but you were never going to do anything but love me until I took some action. I don't mind being the only woman in your life." I giggled. "You will always hold a special place in my heart that no one else can reach. You're my baby, and that's never going to change." She purred and snuggled up to me for a moment. After that, she went about her business. Our first date was a success, as I introduced her to a game of racquetball. Although she was new to the sport, her tennis experience helped her understand the mechanics of hitting. When she got acquainted with the rules and began maneuvering on the court, she demonstrated great skill. Thanks to her natural athleticism, she excelled at the game, demonstrating lightning-fast speed and agility that surpassed my own. Her small stature worked to her advantage, allowing her to quickly change the direction of movement on the court. After the game, we sat at a table near the court, enjoyed drinks, and relaxed. Suddenly, she snatched out her phone and offered to take a picture for the children. We posed with rackets and glasses, and she took a picture. The children responded immediately, giving us a pleasant memory. Later, we took a shower and went to eat. We tasted delicious Italian food and ate our fill. After finishing her wine, Jules sat next to me in the booth, and we leaned back in our chair and just enjoyed the moment. We talked quietly, feeling at ease. Without thinking, I hugged her, and she snuggled up to me, looking at me with a smile. Her cuteness struck me again. It is an eternal quality that will never disappear. When we reached her house, she leaned towards me, her eyes full of anticipation. I understood her silent request for a kiss and obeyed. The desire to kiss her overwhelmed me, surpassing even her own need for it. The moment was long and delightful. Her lips were full and velvety, with a hint of wine and cherry lipstick. When we parted, I noticed that the curtains were rustling. "It looks like we have an audience," I said. She laughed, her voice resembling her daughter's. "I'm not surprised. They're trying to play matchmaking, you know." I asked if she minded, and she blushed. No, I like everything I know about you, Ollie. Me too, I replied. We need to go inside before the curtains are removed. For 4 months, we met every Friday, and our bond grew stronger. I couldn't wait to develop our relationship, but I didn't want to rush her. During some sessions, our bond grew stronger. I realized that I value her friendship no less than our romantic relationship. We regularly communicated by phone and SMS, exchanged funny jokes and short messages. We were practically the same person. We shared our innermost thoughts and feelings, and I couldn't imagine my life without her. Jules was my confidant, partner in crime, and best friend. Our bond was unbreakable, and I felt grateful every day that she was in my life. I knew another person almost as well. Although there were subtle and significant differences between us, we were both incredibly charming, and our differences only highlighted our similarities. Life would have seemed perfect if it weren't for Rachel's constant presence. She was still a part of Toby's life, and therefore mine. I had no desire to communicate with her, and her presence always bothered me. Every time she came to pick up Toby or I took her to her grandparents, she tried to strike up a conversation with me. She continued to live with them even after she lost her job at Jerry's clinic and found a job at another private clinic on the other side of town. If she annoyed me a lot, I would ask if she had heard from him. This quickly stopped her attempts. How long will it take you to forgive me? What is it exactly? She asked on one such occasion. Forgive you? For what? I replied. You don't seem to think you've done anything wrong. Not once did I hear an apology from her. I'm sorry, Oliver. I was wrong. I also didn't hear, I'm sorry that I tried to make Toby believe that you're a liar. I'm sorry that I tried to take her away from you, tried to punish you in the divorce. And what's worse, I've never heard of it. I'm sorry that I cheated and made love to that bastard behind your back. She couldn't take responsibility for her actions. I really didn't know how her forgiveness could turn out. I've reconciled and calmed down. I haven't forgotten, but I'm sure I wasn't going to waste a minute grieving about it. People have the right to make stupid decisions. They may decide to break up with you, leave, or end their relationship with you, and it's important to acknowledge this and move on. People make mistakes on a regular basis. Although at first I was tempted to take revenge on those who betrayed me, I eventually realized that their own actions were punishment enough. They had to come to terms with themselves and find peace within themselves. I made the decision to focus on my own well-being, leaving deception and betrayal in the past and striving to live an authentic life. Rachel was a woman full of discontent, and I wanted the best for Jerry, but I couldn't do it. I decided that fate would deal with them on its own. Jerry turned out to be a real scoundrel. He did a terrible thing to Rachel. He secretly videotaped their lovemaking and uploaded these recordings to an adult website. Now her reputation is disgraced. Her activities in bed have been seen by many, since these videos are walking on different sites and are available to many people. Rachel's unhappiness only worsened when she found out that I was dating Jules. I left Toby at her parents' house for the night, and as I was leaving, she came up to me. I heard that you're dating the mother of one of Toby's friends, she said. I just stared at her. Is it true? What is it exactly? She asked. It's my own business, I replied. Damn it, it's not like that, she snapped. I'm your wife and I deserve to know. I replied, your license is worthless. You're not my wife. You found your soulmate, remember? That's why we got divorced. My business is no longer your business, and yours is no longer mine. Leave me alone, Rachel. Stop interfering in my business. When I left, I was all worked up. This woman just didn't want to put up with it. I told Toby about the situation, and she was just as angry as I was. Then I took Toby to her grandparents, and Rachel brought her to us. Now Bob and Cindy's grandparents will be picking her up from our house. This made my task much easier. To celebrate the 7-month anniversary of our trip to the lake, I invited Jules to a chic restaurant and club. She hardly drank, only occasionally sipping a beer. She had 2 glasses that night, and I raised an eyebrow when she ordered the second one. She laughed, joking that she was wild and crazy. I replied that she was, as always, impeccable. She asked if I really thought that, tilting my head in her usual manner. I replied that she was perfect too. Then she asked why I didn't invite her to stay the night if she was so perfect. She laughed at my obvious fear. "Have you ever thought about it?" I gathered my thoughts and answered, "Yes, Jules. I haven't been able to think of anything else since that day on the yacht when I first saw you in a bikini. I knew you were unique, special. I didn't want to rush things and risk scaring you off." "You won't scare me away," she assured me. "I told the girls not to wait for me." "Really? What are we doing here?" I asked. "Oh my God, Jules, let's get out of here," she exclaimed. "Would you like to stay at my place for the night?" She blushed, took my hand and let me help her up. "More than anything in the world," she replied. When we left, she snuggled up to me, put her head on my shoulder and held my hand all the way home. I walked her to the door when we pulled into the garage, and she snuggled up to me all the way to the bedroom. I carefully turned her around on the edge of the bed and bit into her lips with a passionate kiss. It was a moment that seemed like pure magic, drawn out and endless. When we stopped to catch our breath, I found myself lost in the deep, warm brown depths of her eyes. She wrapped her arms around my neck, looking into my eyes with vulnerability. "Make love to me, Oliver," she whispered. "I'm afraid," I reassured her. "Don't be afraid. I love you, Julian Barnes." "I know you know that," she whispered, "but I needed to hear it." "I love you too, Oliver," she replied, pulling me closer to her and slowly unzipping her pale blue dress. When I ran my fingers down her back, goosebumps ran over her skin, making her shudder. I took the dress off her shoulders, pulled it down her chest and onto her hips. She wasn't wearing a bra, but she didn't need one with her small, perfectly shaped breasts that matched her figure so well. Because of her height, they seemed bigger than they really were. Covered in a golden tan, she was clearly sunbathing topless. Turning her towards me, I sat her down on the bed and held her at arm's length to admire her beauty. I was right. She was a flawless beauty in a small package. In her pale blue lace panties, she looked like a charming, graceful statuette. Pulling her to me, I pressed my cheek against her firm stomach, and my hands greedily clutched at her stunning curves. It was the feeling I craved. Getting up, I hurriedly undressed, almost tearing the buttons off my shirt in my impatience to feel myself on our skin. Left in my shorts, I picked her up in my arms like a child. Her weight barely reached 45 kilograms. I gently carried her to the bed, put my arms around her neck, and then gently laid her on the bed. Our passionate kisses intertwined when she found herself naked in my bed, looking like a romantic angel with loose blonde hair in the form of a halo. Eager to explore further, she stopped me by whispering a promise. "Later, Oliver." I am ready and full of excitement. It feels like it's been an eternity since I last felt like this. "I want you to be with me now." Words were unnecessary, as I was standing completely naked. Her sigh at the sight of me was all the confirmation I needed. "Oh my God, Ollie, don't stop, darling. I've never experienced anything like this before," she admitted. I asked curiously, "How many times have you done this?" 3, she admitted, "but never like this." We took our time, savoring every moment, slowly exploring our connection. As the situation escalated, the tempo accelerated and the volume increased. She was energetic, athletic, and completely devoted to our passionate meeting, like everything else in life. When the tension reached its peak, she let out a hoarse scream and clung tightly to me, sending us both over the edge. We fell asleep in each other's arms and made love twice more during the night. both of us taking the initiative at different times. When morning came, I woke up to find an angel lying next to me. Her hair cascaded over us, and her head snuggled on my shoulder. I watched her sleeping peacefully and gently ran my fingers through her hair until she woke up. Opening her eyes, she snuggled up to me and whispered, "My place is here, Ollie." "I know," I replied quietly. "Do you want to wake up like this every morning?" I asked when she opened her eyes and looked at me. "You mean living together?" she clarified. "No, honey. Well, yes, but I mean, will you marry me?" I suggested. She raised her small left hand between our faces and wiggled her fingers. "No," she replied. "I feel like I'm missing something." "Don't think about it," I said, getting out of bed. "I can hold that thought," she assured me. "I really need to go to the bathroom." I laughed and slapped her buttocks, which made her squeal. "Go, and then we'll meet here." She ran away. A little undressed fairy, I went down to my office, stopping to go to the toilet myself. I took what I came for from the safe, and when I returned, she was already curled up under the blanket. I climbed inside and took her left hand again. I looked into her eyes and saw only love there. "Jules, will you marry me?" I put the ring on her finger. It was too big, and we'll have to resize it, but for now, this will do. She picked it up and looked at it. "It's wonderful," she said. "It looks antique. Where did you get it? When did you buy it?" "Remember, I told you I was going to the auction," I said. "That was about a month ago." "Yes, I remember." "Yes, but I didn't tell you that I saw this ring in the catalog and went there with the intention of buying it and asking you to marry me. It was made in England around 1018 for the Duchess of Avon. He has a long history. Do you like it?" "I like it," she said. "This is the most beautiful ring I've ever seen." "Are you going to answer my question?" "Yes, I will marry you." "Oh my God, yes!" I laughed and hugged my fiancée. "We need to notify the girls." It is difficult to determine the exact moment when a turning point comes in a long-term marriage, especially if it has been built on unshakable trust for decades. Suddenly, my wife told me that she fell in love with a man at first sight after we had been married for 25 years. I was devastated and shattered by this revelation, but her next words left me completely stunned. It was like that moment in the movie The Godfather, when Michael Corleone is fascinated by a woman in Italy and freezes. His two Sicilian bodyguards watch what is happening and begin to talk about how he was hit by a thunderbolt and lost his love. This is not just a scene from a fictional movie. I witnessed how everything unfolded before my eyes, although at that moment I did not understand it. The lightning rod hit my wife, but unfortunately it didn't happen when she met me. It happened 25 years after our marriage with another man, and it was the beginning of the disintegration of what I thought was an ideal life. Maybe I'm overreacting. I have a habit of doing this when I remember my past and how everything should have been, but it wasn't. Maybe I should start at the beginning and introduce myself properly. My name is Alan Gregerson, but most people just call me Greg. I'm 50 years old and I live in a small city in the Midwest about 2 hours from Chicago. I work as an accountant for a large national firm. Although the job may be a bit monotonous, the pay for it is very good. Except for the busy periods in March and April, I usually work more hours a week, and I don't have to work on weekends. I was married a couple of years ago. My ex-wife and I have a daughter named Morgan, who is 25 years old, married, has a child of her own, and lives in Denver. After 26 years of marriage, my ex-wife and I joined the ranks of divorce statistics, despite 25 years, which I considered wonderful, as mentioned above. I first met Tracy in my sophomore year at Iowa State University in Ames, Iowa. She was also a sophomore, having moved into my dorm after finishing her freshman year elsewhere. When my friends and I entered the dorm, I noticed her slender, athletic figure soaking up the bright August Iowa sun. "Guys, I have to leave. I'm going to introduce myself to the future Mrs. Gregerson," I said, half jokingly, half seriously. My friends also turned to look at Tracy. "Wow," one of them commented. I caught the words, but I couldn't make out who said them. I was completely mesmerized by this blonde beauty lying in a bikini on a towel next to the dorm. Ignoring my friends, I headed towards her. But when I was very close to her, she raised herself on her elbow and with her other hand motioned for me to leave. I felt depressed until she spoke. "Hey, idiot! You're bothering my son." I quickly moved a little to the right, allowing the sunlight to envelop the captivating woman next to me again. Her radiant smile lit up everything around me, and at that moment, I would have readily agreed to any request she made. "Much better, you fool!" she laughed. She didn't seem at all surprised by the appearance of the stranger who came up to her. Probably when you are as beautiful as she is, such meetings are quite expected. I complimented her on her beauty and offered to set up a date for next Friday night. "If I agree, could you take the drool off your chin?" she teased playfully. "What? Oh yes, drooling. There are absolutely none," I stuttered awkwardly. "Well, now it's clear that you're not one of those smart talkers with rehearsed lines. So yes, let's meet on Friday night," she said with a smile. I got her phone number. On Friday evening, we had dinner at a charming Italian restaurant in Ames. While I sat entranced, she entertained me with stories from her life, from the age of 3 to the present. She seemed to interrupt her story only when the main course was being served. We easily found a common language, and within a month we spent almost all our free time together. She was not only smart, but also had a playful sense of humor and calm self-confidence. I thought I had a decent appearance, not extraordinary, but I was quite athletic, having received 7 sports grades at school. I was also smart, ranked in the top 5 in my class, and could have meaningful conversations on a variety of topics. Although Tracy pointed out that I didn't have any prepared lines for all occasions, I was confident in myself. But when I asked her out, I realized that I was not up to the mark. You never know what you're going to achieve if you don't try, right? Tracy and I had our first intimate encounter on our 6th date. Neither of us had much experience, but by that time I didn't have many partners, and I realized that the same applies to Tracy. Despite my limited experience, I had a secret weapon. I actually read articles in various adult magazines and not just stared at pictures. Judging by the enthusiastic reviews I received from my partners, it seemed that I had to develop a certain skill in this area, and the knowledge I gained was not in vain. Tracy and I tied the knot shortly after graduating from university. Finding a job turned out to be easy for both of us. She got a job as a 3rd-grade teacher, and I continued my career as an accountant. Having a stable income, a couple of years later we bought a house, and almost exactly a year after moving, we gave birth to our only child, a daughter. Life was busy. Our intimate life, although not overly adventurous, was varied and regular enough for both of us to be satisfied. Over time, as with many couples, the demands of time and age have slightly reduced the frequency. Nevertheless, even after Morgan left for college, we maintained a passionate bond, engaging in intimate relationships 3 or 4 times a week. From time to time, I had fleeting concerns about Tracy's loyalty, but they were infrequent. She mentioned a new young teacher at her school who flirted but showed no signs of reciprocation or desire to start a further relationship. I put it down to my own insecurity. Tracy is undoubtedly attractive, and I couldn't blame anyone for admiring her. But admiration shouldn't be anything more. At the very beginning of our relationship, I made it clear to Tracy, there is no place for cheating in our relationship. She supported me by saying that she didn't mind if I looked at other women, but any physical contact was unacceptable. I sincerely respected her boundaries. That's how we lived until 3 years ago when we found ourselves at an annual summer party hosted by our neighbors, 3 houses down in an upscale neighborhood. Scott and Wendy Harris always have a one-day party at their house on the weekend after July 4th, and Tracy and I try to attend it every year. Along with most of our neighbors on the block, we invariably have a great time at the annual summer parties. Scott and Wendy are wonderful hosts. They offer delicious food and drinks, and there is a large swimming pool and a sand volleyball court on their property. The guests they invite from other areas are usually pleasant, with one exception, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The party started at noon, and Tracy and I took our time getting to the place around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I went to the bar, picked up a white Zinfandel for Tracy and Michelob for myself, and we started chatting, first staying close to each other, and then gradually entering into separate conversations both indoors and outdoors. This has never been a concern in the past. From time to time, I contacted Tracy to see if she needed a snack or something to eat, or if she came to pick me up herself. We usually said goodbye with a short kiss on the lips. I was chatting with the male neighbors, and Tracy was chatting with a group of women at the other end of the yard, when several unfamiliar faces appeared. A man entered with 2 women, and Scott came over to greet them. It was then that I noticed a dramatic change in Tracy's behavior. As I was watching the new arrivals, my gaze accidentally fell on Tracy. She stopped talking to her friends and looked at the newcomers with a mixture of surprise and longing. At that moment, I couldn't pinpoint her expression, but it was obvious that she was fascinated, and frankly, I felt a little uneasy. After watching them for about 10 seconds, Tracy turned her attention to me, made eye contact, blushed deeply, and turned back to her friends. Have you ever had such a special feeling that something is wrong, but you can't figure out what it is? I had the same feeling about an hour later when I couldn't find Tracy in the yard. I brought her some white wine, looked around, and eventually found her in a Harris booth with 4 other men, including the one she was looking at earlier. His arm was casually wrapped around her, and his palm was on her hip. And this man seemed too familiar to me, considering that they had only recently met. They seemed to be having a friendly conversation, but the sight made me uneasy. I believed in myself and trusted my wife completely, and I didn't want to make a scene. But I felt that the situation was becoming too intimate for ordinary acquaintances. I walked up to them from behind Tracy and her new companion, and grabbing him tightly by the wrist, lifted him off his hip. We haven't been properly introduced to each other yet, although you seem quite comfortable with my wife, I said firmly. He tried to pull away, but my firm grip held him in place. Realizing my presence, Tracy blushed even more. "Oh, Greg, please," she exclaimed, noticing my grip on the man's wrist. "Greg, this is Charles Delane. He teaches European literature at the college and enrolled there last year. He's French and he didn't cross any boundaries, so I didn't mind his hand." The rest of the group nodded approvingly, and I let go of Charles's wrist and held out my hand for a firm handshake, pushing a little to assert my superiority. Then Tracy introduced me to the other guests, but that was later. "I thought you might need a refill," I said, handing Tracy a glass of wine and turning to Charles. "You are always so attentive, my dear husband," she replied. Charles, pronounced Charles in French, struck me as a typical European guy. I have to admit, he was quite handsome. At 32, Charles was undeniably good-looking. He had a beard with 3 days of stubble and hair that could not decide whether to be long or need a haircut. And Charles spoke English with a pronounced French accent. This led me to think that he might have a romantic relationship with half of his students, regardless of gender. After meeting him, he returned to discussing Victor Hugo or someone similar. Feeling satisfied that I had confirmed my presence, I went out into the courtyard. Eventually, Tracy and Charles joined us in the backyard to start a game of sand volleyball. I actively participated in these matches, and since we were on the winning team, we had a lot of events. There were usually quite a few spectators on the court who watched what was happening from a safe distance, where my wife and Charles were sitting next to each other. I was so focused on the game that I didn't pay much attention to them. I didn't notice how they exchanged friendly gestures, touching each other with their hands, exchanging smiles, and even sometimes I noticed that my wife was blushing. From time to time I waved at her, and she waved back. After my team had won several victories and held control of the site for an hour, I noticed that Tracy and Charles were no longer in their seats. I couldn't find them both. Sensing that something was wrong, I persuaded one of the players to take my place, explaining this by the fatigue of my 47-year-old legs and a strong desire to drink beer. As I left, I endured good-natured taunts about my age. Continuing to act, I headed to the bar to have another drink, then wandered aimlessly around the yard and eventually entered the house. I carefully searched all the available rooms and strained to hear at least some sounds behind closed doors. But neither Tracy nor Charles was in sight. Eventually, I went up to the hostess, Wendy, and casually asked if she had seen my wife. Of course, she and Charles went outside to check something in his car, Wendy replied. What kind of car does he drive? I asked with a note of irritation in my tone. And then it dawned on Wendy. After 15 years of friendship and neighborly communication, she assumed a worried expression and replied, He drives a gray Saab. When I went outside, I looked in both directions, but there was no sign of the Saab. Wendy joined me in the driveway. I'm sure it's okay, Greg, she said soothingly. Maybe they just stopped by the college for a minute? Yes, thank you. It's probably nothing, I replied uncertainly before leaving. The local college was only a 5-minute drive from our house, and I decided to find out for myself. I drove up to the school and thoroughly searched all the parking lots, but there was no sign of the Saab. I tried to call Tracy's cell phone, but the call immediately went to voicemail, assuming she was busy or her phone was turned off. I left a message and left 4 more for the next hour while I stayed at home. I also contacted her parents and sister to find out if they had spoken to her that day. They all answered in the negative. It was at this moment that an old quote from Sherlock Holmes came to mind. The truth, no matter how incredible it may be, must remain true. I sank into a chair in the family room, staring at an empty big screen that seemed to last forever. There was no need to turn on the TV. Vivid images of my beautiful wife with this Frenchman flashed through my head over and over again. I couldn't help but wonder, why did we involve this country in 2 world wars? We might as well leave it to the Germans. I spent the night in an armchair, unable to sleep, without taking my eyes off the silently running TV. Part of me hoped that Tracy would return in the middle of the night. But as the hours passed and she was still nowhere to be seen, an alarming thought crept into my head. Charles could have had an accident, and Tracy was his passenger. By 8 in the morning, the uncertainty had become unbearable. I called the local sheriff's office and introduced myself. He asked if there had been any incidents during the night. Unfortunately, they confirmed that there were none. I tried to call Tracy's phone 4 more times, but all attempts went unanswered. Towards noon, I heard a car pull up to the driveway and the sound of a door closing. About 45 seconds later, Tracy opened the door with her key, entered the house, and a few minutes later noticed me in the family room. She quietly sat down on the sofa at the other end of the room. Her mere presence dispelled all my doubts about their activities. At least she had the decency to come home and face me. Her long blonde hair, which had been loose the day before, was now tied in a ponytail, and she had not put on makeup. She was wearing the same yellow sundress as the day before, and her chest, shoulders, and arms were slightly glowing with a pinkish light. There was a satisfied expression on her face, as if she was completely satisfied, and I couldn't deny that she looked great. There was no hint of regret or guilt in her demeanor. She just seemed to be grinning. It's nice that you finally showed up. Did you like it last night and this morning? Actually, yes, she replied smugly. I didn't expect such a reaction. Listen, Greg, she continued calmly. Have you ever felt an amazing physical and emotional connection with a person as soon as you saw them? Almost electric and extraordinary? Yes, I felt it, I replied without hesitation. I married this woman. Her calm smile disappeared, and understanding flashed in her eyes. I found mine yesterday. I can't explain it. I need him. I love him. Just like that? Are you crazy? I exclaimed. Are you really ready to throw away 25 years of marriage for some kind of feeling? Don't I mean anything to you? I don't know why she didn't expect my outburst. She burst into tears when I snapped, but I remained unperturbed. I really love you, Greg, she finally sighed through her tears. Our time together was amazing. The connection connecting me to him is really amazing. I love you, but I'm in love with him. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable? I understand. Give me some time to recover and I'll throw you a party, I replied sharply. Well, shall we start the divorce process or don't you want to? I asked. We'll split everything equally, even sell the house. I don't think we should rush into a divorce, she replied. There was a note of desperation in her voice. Let's wait and see how events develop. We can make important decisions later. Now it's my turn to feel disappointed. What? It doesn't happen that way, I objected. You can't keep me as a backup plan. If you're with him, then go to him right away. In my opinion, our relationship ended when you were with him yesterday. Repeating this will only strengthen my resolve. But, she stuttered. Good. I will start the divorce process and vacate the premises by the end of the week. Keeping my promise, I took my things out of the house before the end of the week. To cope with the move, I took a couple of personal days off at work. One evening, as I was loading things into my pickup truck, Scott and Wendy Harris came up to me and expressed regret that they had invited Charles to their party. I politely intervened, reminding them that they could not have foreseen Tracy's behavior. The divorce papers were prepared by my lawyer, and Tracy received them within a month. It seems that she assumed that I would delay the process. When she was handed the papers, the bailiff noted that she had a violent reaction. Perhaps this explains why she showed up at my new apartment just 2 days later and stormed inside when I answered the doorbell. How could you start this if you really love me like you say you do? She exclaimed as she entered my apartment. When the rage took hold of me, I quickly pulled myself together. Are you really that ignorant? I replied angrily. You're in a relationship with another man. What reaction did you expect from me? I can love you, but I won't cheat on you. And if it doesn't work out, what should I do then? Just give me some time. If it's over, I'll come back to you and be the perfect wife. We can grow old together. You're kidding yourself, I replied sharply. I'm not giving you the green light to run after your dream partner while you're checking out the situation. Besides, if he's really your dream partner, why wouldn't it work? Well, Charles is currently going through a divorce with his wife, and they have some financial problems. Does this mean that he may be the right man for you, but you can't be the right woman? I asked. She continued to stutter, and in the end, I insisted that she leave my apartment, warning her that, if necessary, I would take her out by force. Tracy and her lawyer tried to delay the trial. Meanwhile, Mr. Charles has taken over my former residence and assumed my role. 4 months later, as I was leaving Chez Michel's restaurant with a colleague after a business dinner, I noticed a familiar couple heading for the door, Charles and a visibly pregnant Tracy. Apparently, she was 3 months pregnant. I stopped abruptly, blocking their path. Oh my God, I whispered, and my colleague stopped next to me, looking as puzzled as the four of us standing in front of each other. Serge, meet my wife. Well, at least for a while, and her partner. Serge found herself in an awkward position when it was necessary to be polite in an extremely uncomfortable situation. It seemed to me that she handled it gracefully. "You're pregnant. Is this his? Are you sure it's his?" I said cheerfully. "You're a jerk, Greg. Do you know that?" Tracy stated bluntly when she and Charles walked past us into the restaurant. Wendy Harris later informed me that Tracy was indeed 3 months pregnant. It seems that Tracy decided to give up birth control because she appreciated Charles and wanted to have a child with him. "Good luck to you," I said to Wendy. A few months later, the divorce was finalized, and 2 months later, Tracy gave birth to a son. They named him Charles Jr., perhaps in deference to Charles's supposed greatness. Our daughter Morgan was unhappy that Tracy decided to have another child, especially considering the circumstances of our separation and the fact that I was not the father. I admired Morgan for being supportive during this time. Although I knew about Tracy's new baby, I hadn't spoken to her or seen her since we met at the restaurant a few months ago. It was inevitable that our paths would cross again, because we both lived in the same city. But the first meeting with her after giving birth took me by surprise. The weight she gained did not suit her, and it seemed that the experience affected her 49-year-old body. I almost didn't recognize this slightly overweight figure pushing a stroller with a toddler at the local mall. "Come on, Greg, don't be so rude." As I was hurrying past them one Saturday afternoon, a familiar voice called out to me. I stopped abruptly, unable to ignore the impulse, and cast a close, almost cinematic glance at the woman and child standing in front of me. Oh no, it was Tracy and her son. "Hi, it's been a long time," I managed to say, trying to collect my thoughts. "Hello to you too," she replied. The child, as expected, was undeniably charming. He inherited Tracy's hair and eye color, but his father had a slightly darker complexion. "Wow, he's just handsome," I said sincerely. Tracy blushed slightly and graciously thanked me for the compliment. "We haven't seen each other for a long time. And of course, seeing you with a stroller..." I apologized for not recognizing her right away. Although she visibly flinched at my apologies, she graciously waved them off without further comment. Although she had seemed incredibly attractive to me after Morgan was born many years ago, she was now more than 2 decades older. Since this baby wasn't mine, I assumed my hormones were under control. We chatted amicably for a few more minutes, mostly discussing her problems with sleep deprivation. I caught a hint of genuine sadness, which she never showed after Morgan was born. In the end, I justified myself and left to continue the purchases I had originally intended to make. The next meeting with Tracy took place at the Harris summer camp about 6 months later. Scott and Wendy have always felt remorse over the fact that Tracy met Charles at their party. Then I assured them, and sincerely, that I did not hold them responsible for Tracy's unfortunate choice. Despite this, Wendy persisted in trying to set me up with her single and divorced acquaintances, and I have to admit, some of these acquaintances turned out to be promising. Even though I missed the last 2 summer meetings, they insisted on inviting me, and this time I decided to go, even though they warned me that Tracy and Charles would be there. I assured them that if there were problems, I would not create them, and I intended to keep that promise. I had been at the party for several hours when I noticed that Tracy and Charles had come to the backyard without their child. I figured they'd found a babysitter for the baby. Tracy had lost some weight during pregnancy and looked less plump than when we last met, but there was sadness in her once bright blue eyes. Even when she smiled, there was a kind of emptiness in her gaze. To relieve the obvious tension, I took the initiative and went up to Tracy and Charles, quickly hugged her and shook his hand. I caught a hint of surprise from both of them. I felt Wendy hold her breath as I approached her. We talked for about a minute, after which I left and went to my friends at the grill. When the sand volleyball game started, I joined one of the teams. In the midst of the second sand game, I noticed Tracy, who was sitting on a chair, watching what was happening and suffering on the sidelines. Mr. Charles was absent. After losing 2 games in the second, we had to leave the court and wait for the next opportunity. As I was getting out a beer, my gaze fell on Tracy, who was sitting alone. Old habits die hard, I thought to myself, took my drink and headed into the house. When I looked into the third room, the pantry, my suspicions were confirmed. Charles had his arm around Marilyn Jansen's waist, conducting a conversation in a small circle, and Marilyn looked at him with interest. Marilyn, a former neighbor from the next street, was clearly married. I should have kept my observations to myself. When I thought about the situation, it became clear to me that he intended to betray Tracy and have an intimate relationship with this woman tonight. If I had kept silent, I would have become an accomplice to his deception. If I spoke, it would only lead to chaos, and I would still be considered wrong. A real friend would have warned Tracy, but I was no longer just a friend. I was her ex-husband. Why should I have interfered? And then fate intervened. Following me inside to discuss strategy, he also noticed a disturbing scene that caught my attention. Charles was hugging Troy's wife with an expression of admiration on his face. "You're a sneaky person. Get your hands off my wife, you idiot!" came Troy's angry voice as he rushed towards Charles. At first, I wanted to intervene in the escalated situation, but decided to step back and let my volleyball teammate take matters into his own hands. Before Charles could pull away from his wife, Troy grabbed his arm and twisted it violently, causing Charles to crack loudly and scream in pain. The commotion attracted even more spectators into the room. Fortunately, one of Wendy's friends, an emergency room nurse, quickly assessed Charles's injury and called an ambulance. 2 police officers arrived with an ambulance about 10 minutes later. They gathered testimony from everyone present in case Charles decides to press charges against Troy Jensen. The senior officer, Secretary Jim Hill, was about my age, and the junior officer, Kathleen McDonald, looked to be about 40 years old with pronounced Irish features. I made sure to give my statement to Officer McDonald. Amid all the chaos, Tracy tearfully held onto Charles's intact arm and tried to comfort him while paramedics dealt with his injury. It was obvious that she was not aware of the unfolding events. After the paramedics took him to the hospital, Tracy stayed. She asked me for advice and I nodded, suggesting that she talk to Officer McDonald, and then pointed my fingers at the number 5. McDonald noticed that Tracy was waiting and came up to me for questioning. I recounted the events, mentioning that Charles stole my wife from me at a party 3 years ago. She reacted with surprise to this revelation. "And yet you're going to accompany him to the hospital?" I asked. She asked, "Are you exceptionally kind or incredibly stupid?" Her question caught me off guard. When I looked up at her, I saw that she was trying to hide a smile. "Incredibly stupid," I replied. My answer surprised her, and she let out a laugh that I found strangely comforting. After a few more questions, I finished my statement. Then McDonald allowed me to accompany Tracy to the hospital. Before he left, he warned me that Tracy might not believe my version of events. "I'm not counting on it," I replied. When I started to leave, he moved on to the next addressee to testify, but a sudden impulse prompted me to speak out. "Maybe it would be nice to give me your card in case I remember something else, officer." He smiled and took a business card out of his pocket. Turning it over, he quickly wrote down what turned out to be his personal phone number. "Thank you, officer," I grinned, then turned serious and turned to Tracy. "Let's go." While we were getting to the hospital, Tracy asked about Charles. I told the truth, anticipating her distrust. "Can't you forget about him, Greg?" she whined. "It's been 3 years." "It's not about forgetting, Trace," I replied. Charles crossed the line in his relationship with Marilyn Jensen, and Troy's reaction was justified. perhaps if I had shown such courage, we would still be a couple. The words came out of my mouth without warning, which brought tears to Tracy's eyes, and she turned away in the pickup truck. I dropped Tracy off at the emergency room, but I didn't go inside with her. After the divorce, she and Charles had to make do with the funds we shared when we sold the house to buy a small apartment. Since Tracy was busy for the evening, I took out the business card the officer had given me from my shirt pocket. She was a truly amazing woman. I thought about it and decided to act calmly, waiting 3 days before contacting Officer Kathleen McDonald. She answered on the second ring. "Could you wait a little longer? I could already get engaged and get married," she teased on the phone. "You may be right, but rushing won't make you the next and last Mrs. Gregerson," I replied. "Well, who's the impudent one now?" she replied. "How do you know that I will even say yes when you invite me? And no, I'm not interested in going on a date to some Irish pub," she added. Her mention of an Irish pub took me by surprise, as that was where I had planned to take her. It seemed quite appropriate to take an Irish girl to an Irish pub. She noticed my hesitation and correctly guessed my intentions. "What's the matter with you guys? Can't any of you be more creative? Just because I have fiery red hair?" she noticed. After a short pause, I switched to my backup plan. There was a fantastic Greek restaurant in town that I loved, offering a departure from Irish cuisine. She reacted positively to the idea. "Thanks for the spontaneity," she said. "When I turn down an Irish pub, most guys prefer an Asian one, but I'm not a fan of food resembling a cockroach hideout." Her comment made me burst out laughing, and I felt a connection that could last a lifetime. We talked for another hour, discussing various topics. I found out that she is actually 45 years old. She has been divorced for 10 years because of her ex's infidelity. She has a son who is a law student at Michigan State University. Our Saturday dinner was exceptional and was accompanied by wonderful company. I picked her up from her house on the south side of the city and was stunned by how amazing she looked in her little black dress and 4-centimeter heels. She had curves in all the right places, a beautiful face and bright red hair, embodying the concept of beautiful. Our conversation turned to different topics, and her mesmerizing voice caught my attention. It seems that she was in no hurry to get a husband. Like me, who was in no hurry to find a wife, she had a calm and intriguingly unpredictable manner of behavior, which was complemented by her natural curiosity, similar to a detective. She asked sharp questions, demonstrating not only the ability to listen carefully, but also a deep involvement in our conversation. After dinner, I drove her home without asking her to come to my place. When we reached her house, we wished each other good night. Suddenly, she quickly bent down and kissed me gently on the cheek, which made me blush. I wished her good night and practically swam to my car, feeling like a teenager again. The feeling of her soft lips on my cheek did not leave me, and I could almost smell the perfume. The next Sunday morning, she called and invited me to try a pie at her house, which I couldn't refuse. A few days later, Wendy and Scott invited me to dinner, partly to apologize for recent events, and partly to listen to my vision of the situation. It turned out that Charles had threatened legal action against them and Troy Jansen. "Does this guy really consider himself a real ladies' man?" Scott exclaimed at one point. "He's very handsome, dear, and undoubtedly charming," Wendy remarked, earning Scott a sharp look. According to the Harrises, Troy spent the weekend behind bars and was released on bail Monday morning. Upon returning home, Marilyn and their children were nowhere to be found, and they took refuge with her mother in a nearby town. Scott suggested that their 12-year marriage may be nearing its end. "Tell Troy to contact me and assure me that I sympathize with his situation. I'm here if he needs an advisor, and I will support him when it comes to court," I offered. "We will pass on this message, and I am sure he will appreciate your support," Scott replied. "By the way, We decided that this is our last summer meeting. The stress is too great. As Scott spoke, Wendy seemed preoccupied with her plate of peas, which indicated that things weren't the same after the Harrisland party. A few months later, when 47-year-old Wendy began showing off her bust in public, my suspicions were confirmed. Scott called himself to break the news. "Can you believe this mess?" He practically shouted into the phone. "This jerk got my wife pregnant. She's been having an affair with him since last year's party." Scott said he didn't know about it until Wendy started experiencing morning sickness every day. It was similar to what she had experienced during previous pregnancies with their 2 children many years ago. Realizing this, Scott met with her, and she admitted that she had been having an affair with Charles for a year, stressing that they had used protective equipment that they had abandoned during a weekend trip to a motel. After this confession, Scott jokingly asked me to recommend my lawyer to him, joking about a discount for friends and relatives. Scott said that Charles and Wendy moved into an apartment near the campus, leaving Tracy and her son to cope alone. "It's not my concern," I replied, not understanding the complexities of the female psyche. During lunch at a nearby McDonald's, Tracy came to my table with her son. Their hands were intertwined. After putting down the tray, her child readily sat down next to me. "Hi, Tracy. Hi, baby," I greeted them. The boy, who is now about 3 years old, held out a clean hand to shake. Impressed by his maturity, I shook his hand firmly. "Hello, sir," he said sincerely. "Hi, Greg," Tracy added. "He's growing up so fast," I remarked, looking at her son. "Maybe you have a future 2-meter guy." Tracy's expression indicated that she understood my attempt to be polite, but at the same time there was a hidden concern in it, hinting at an approaching turning point. Sensing her concern, I gently nudged her to open up while her son unwrapped a cheeseburger. "Did you really love me as much as you claimed?" she began softly. "If so, why didn't you fight for me like Troy fought for Marilyn? Why didn't you ask me to come back, like someone who really loved me would? Why haven't you come to my house yet to check on me and my son, or maybe even invite us to visit?" Tracy's unexpected question caught me off guard. Is she implying that it's my fault? I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure and not let my anger flare up. "Wow," I breathed out. "So it's all because of me? Really? Are you an innocent victim here?" My voice gradually grew louder as I spoke, unwittingly building up tension. I exclaimed, raising my hand. "Do you remember how I took Charles's hand off your waist, and you insisted that nothing was happening and asked me not to cause problems? I trusted you completely and didn't insist. I'm sorry that I trusted you so much. If I had known then what I know now, I wouldn't have trusted you. I would have reacted differently like Troy, but you, the woman I trusted the most, lied to me and I didn't fight for you." When you came home the next day at noon, what could I say? Obviously, the damage has already been done, and repeatedly. So what was left to argue about? You gave yourself to another man and broke our vows. I had nothing else to fight for. You've made everything very clear. It was solely your decision, and I had no say in it. So what was I fighting for? You weren't mine anymore. You belonged to him. But you never once tried to convince me to stay or persuade me to stay. Nothing. How many times did you sleep with Charles that first night and morning if you really love me? I asked. I'm sure that more than once. Maybe the first time was a mistake, but the decision to do it again was a conscious one. All that happened next was that you broke my heart and tore it to pieces, and you had the courage to say that you had a fantastic time, an extraordinary time if I remember correctly, and that you had an almost supernatural connection with him. You didn't regret anything. You know that the words lust and debauchery consist of the same 4 letters. And what was I supposed to think? As they say, if you love something, let it go. If it comes back, then it was yours. This has never happened. And then, not to offend, you gave birth to his child at the age of 48. I have not been able to convince you to have a second child in 25 years. But you are not only ready to accept Charles, but also allow him to impregnate you. So it's all because of your wounded male ego? Tracy replied. Her tone was sharper than I expected. I focused on her words, but refused to communicate further with the child present at the table. What you decided to do when you were with him was your decision. It seems like you loved him so much that you wanted to have a child with him, even if you never wanted another one with me. Believe me, I received this message, I replied. There was a short silence as she looked hesitant. I sensed the direction the conversation was taking and decided to bring up the subject. So, what are your plans? I asked. You and Charles never got married, but he is recognized as the father of the child, right? At the very least, you have to collect alimony from him. I'll ask Wendy to deal with him, Tracy replied. But you're right. I have to collect alimony from this idiot traitor. This is sound advice. Then she added, have you ever thought about what could be between us? How things could have turned out? To be honest, no, I replied quietly. You broke my heart so much that I don't want to dwell on what could have been. I have some wonderful memories of our past lives that I will keep forever. But that's in the past, and it will never come back. We continued our meal, watching the boy who was playing with French fries, resembling Morgan's daughter. He's a great kid, I remarked, feeling relieved that there was something positive in this relationship. Despite the fact that it all started with an amazing connection, in the end we were never able to become as close as you and I are. Although our physical intimacy began with passion, it did not develop along with our emotional connection. Love never replaced lust when it died out, I reflected. She seemed to realize this truth too, and the moment she shook her head sadly, tears welled up in her eyes. She decided to exchange the warmth and reliability of love for a fleeting thrill of passion, which blinds for a short time and then fades away. Recently, my beloved partner and I celebrated our 10th wedding anniversary with a trip to an unexpected place, Spain. Initially, I suggested going to her homeland, but her playful reaction, which left a mark on my hand, directed us towards a place with a sunnier climate and spicy aromas. The warmth and energy of our relationship was reflected in the choice of location. Continuing to work together for several more years before retiring from the computer security firm we created, we reflect on the successes we achieved after my transition from engineering and her departure from law enforcement to join me in entrepreneurship. Despite the fact that we spend most of our time together, both personally and professionally, our bond remains fresh and vibrant. My love for her seems to be getting deeper every day, despite the banality of this feeling. We have 2 children of our own, and now we have 5 grandchildren. Despite the physical distance separating us from one family in Denver and another in Houston, Texas, we cherish the opportunity to regularly spend time with our beloved grandchildren. I meet Tracy in town from time to time, but our communication rarely goes beyond a brief exchange of opinions. She is focused on her role as a mother to her son, who is now about 13 years old. According to my daughter, Tracy has not remarried and rarely goes on dates. It seems that her ex, Charles, eventually started paying child support regularly after some initial resistance, which makes her existence seem somewhat restrained. Despite the absence of many luxury items, we all go our own way and have to accept the consequences of our decisions. I don't feel it necessary to apologize for moving forward in my life. If there were rewards for revealing my wife's infidelity, then I would most likely be in the top 3, since I had to use manipulation tactics to reveal my wife's infidelity. I was preparing for a trip with her, and it seemed to me that everything was fine between us. But, as often happens in life, at the most inopportune moment, I was faced with a shocking revelation. My private investigator informed me that Steve follows a strict daily routine. The drink helped me cope with the situation. As the lounge area became more and more lively, I began to glance at the bar when I noticed Steve in the long mirror located behind the bottles of alcohol. He joined his friends, and there was already a mug of beer on the table in front of him. Steve, tall and handsome, seemed 10 years younger than me. His height confidently exceeded mine. He had a fit and athletic build. Blonde hair, blue eyes, and ageless, well-defined features are obviously why my wife, Lori, found him attractive during her regular business trips to corporate headquarters in Charlotte. The private investigator has effectively collected the most important details. Steve worked for the company for 2 years, held the position of marketing director, comparable in status to Lori's role in the sales department. They worked on several projects together and often went to meetings with clients together. I refrained from asking the private investigator in detail, since Steve and Lori had already presented solid evidence themselves. After finishing my drink, I asked for another one and paid the bill. After crossing the room, I sat down next to their table and looked at the group consisting of 5 men and 2 women with Steve. "Hi, Steve. I'm Chris Harrington, Lori's husband," I introduced myself. I was hoping that we could find a private place to talk. Steve looked puzzled at first. Despite his smiling appearance, his eyes betrayed a deep sense of anxiety. "Chris, hi, nice to meet you. What brings you to Charlotte?" he asked. "I came here for a personal conversation with you," I replied. "Chris, I'm here with my friends right now. Could we arrange a meeting at another time?" I looked around the room, watching him. He pointed to an empty booth at the back of the room. "I only need 10 minutes. I'll take this booth," I said. As I walked away from Steve's table, I noticed how he finished his beer and ordered another one. After a few minutes, he came up to me with a worried expression on his face. "I can't understand why you came to North Carolina to talk to me. It would be much easier to call," he said. "I wanted to meet a man who had an intimate relationship with my wife." My concise and direct answer made Steve drop his hands before he could respond. "It's not what you think," he protested. I grinned and replied, "That's exactly what I think it is." I told him that I had managed to access the cloud server where he and Lori stored the videos, and now I have duplicates of all 16 recordings. Steve was even more surprised. "Do you have copies of them?" he asked. Instead of answering, I asked, "How long has this been happening?" "I don't know for sure," Steve admitted. "About a year ago, the 4 of us went to the Union Core Company in Cleveland. Lori's laptop battery ran out, and I lent her mine. Suddenly, she came across a fetish site that I often browse. Well, Steve, this just proves my forgetfulness," I confessed. "I thought our affair lasted 6 to 8 months." Steve bowed his head in response. "He hasn't been in physical shape for a while. Lori was intrigued, and we chatted and exchanged emails." An unspoken tension filled the room, enveloping us in silence as we considered the situation. "Chris, she loves you. You know that, don't you?" said Steve. I nodded in confirmation. "I love her too. That's why the divorce is going to be so difficult," I almost shouted. "Are you serious? Are you going to ruin your marriage because of this?" I sighed. "I deserve more than infidelity and infidelity. I'm tempted to label her, but I'm not sure her actions deserve that term. But these actions deserve a divorce." There was a heavy silence at the table for an unexpectedly long time, until Steve asked, "Chris, what are your intentions regarding the videos?" "I have no intention of harming Lori," I replied. Suddenly I was tired, and my only desire was to leave the bar. "Steve, I need to leave because I have to fly home early tomorrow morning," I continued. "Lori flew to Philadelphia this morning and will be back tomorrow afternoon. We'll discuss this later." I met Steve's gaze. "Don't you dare tell Lori. I'll find out if you do, and these videos will become known to everyone in your life." I quickly finished my drink, slammed the glass on the table, and headed to the hotel. We made a commitment to spend 2 weeks of vacation together every year. Our upcoming fall vacation was supposed to start in Vancouver, And then we were going on an exciting trip along the Pacific coast, heading south to San Francisco, with stops in Seattle and Portland. On Friday, I ordered a rental car for our trip and arranged a first-class flight to Vancouver and from San Francisco. As I was finishing my hotel reservation, I suddenly came across the first signs of Lori's affair. Lori and I often traveled for work, using the accumulated bonuses for flights, points for hotels, and car rentals to cut down on vacation expenses. These business travel bonuses were one of the few that helped us reduce our vacation expenses. Although we used to usually have enough points to cover our travel needs, I was surprised to learn that we would have to pay for 3 or 4 nights at a Marriott hotel in the upcoming vacation. It seemed incompatible with our usual arrangements. After only 51 days, I felt uneasy, wondering where Lori had spent the rest of her days. Comparing her schedule with my Marriott Rewards account, I realized that she had not booked any hotel seats during the trip to the corporate office in Charlotte. My stomach clenched, and for the first time in almost 28 years of our marriage, I doubted Lori's loyalty. Immersed in problem-solving, I was not one to avoid difficult conversations. Nevertheless, I decided to postpone my investigation for now. I informed my assistant about my plans and left the office, mentioning that I needed to go to the gym early for a workout. In the company's locker room, I quickly changed into sports clothes. I ran to the nearest gym, worked out with dumbbells, and jogged back to the office. After a quick shower and changing clothes, I met Anne on my way back to the office. "Chris, you need to make some calls," she informed me. "Anne, I have a personal matter. It will take me about an hour to settle it," I replied. "Is that why you went to the gym so early?" Anne asked, to which I nodded in confirmation. When I passed by, Anne was closing the door to the office. She asked, "Is there anything I can do to help?" I shook my head, sensing her surprise at the magnitude of my problem. The tension returned when I sat down at my desk, and my frustration peaked when the phone rang a few seconds later. "Anne, I just said I need an hour." "I'm sorry, but Jim needs to talk to you," she said desperately. "He told me to get involved in your conversation." Jim and I have had a strong friendship and professional relationship throughout my career. As the president of the company and the son of its founder, he was my mentor, guiding me as I climbed the career ladder to become his right-hand man and take the position of vice president of sales and marketing. Sighing, I turned to Anne. "I'm sorry I snapped. Please transfer the call." As soon as I picked up the phone, Jim asked, "Why aren't you answering your phone? What's going on?" I replied, "I need an hour, Jim. Can we meet for lunch?" Jim replied, "It's impossible. I'm going to arrange a quick meeting on the Watson problem and I need your participation." Feeling furious and on the verge of losing my temper, I begged, "Jim, please wait until lunch. I have a matter to resolve." There was a tense silence on the line, and then Jim coldly agreed. "I'll meet you at lunch." With a knot in my stomach, I continued my investigation. Both of our companies used the same online expense reports, so I logged into Lori's account and carefully studied all her expense reports for 2 years. Most of Lori's trips were concentrated east of the Mississippi. About a third of her business trips were to the Charlotte headquarters, and the rest were to the company headquarters. According to Lori's travel reports, up to 8 months ago, her expenses in various cities were covered by an American Express corporate card, including accommodation at Marriott hotels. But from that point on, hotel expenses were absent on all trips, except the trip to Charlotte. When I looked at the details again, I was overcome by a feeling of disbelief. Everything seemed unreal, as if my world was collapsing. But at some point, clarity came, which gave a simple explanation. I laughed with relief, berating myself for doubting my closest companion, my wife. Many companies have reduced their budgets by introducing measures to control the living expenses of employees during visits to corporate offices. Some companies preferred to pay hotel bills directly at reduced rates, accumulating points for future employee trips. It dawned on me that this might explain the situation with Lori's Marriott points. Without hesitation, I opened the contact list on my computer and started looking for the employee responsible for Lori's finances. Out of 46 contacts related to Lori's work, I eventually found the number of Sam Jennings, the CFO. I dialed his number and left a voice message, introducing myself. "Sam, this is Chris Harrington, Lori's husband. We have met at several Excel meetings in the past. I am currently in contact with financial specialists from various companies to find out if there is a growing trend towards saving money by directly covering hotel costs. Although our financial team is considering this possibility, I personally am against it, because I believe that our employees should continue to enjoy the benefits of accumulating points for hotel stays. I will be grateful for the call back." I gave the contact number of my office and then went to Jim's office for a scheduled meeting. At the beginning of the meeting, Jim gave me a puzzled look, to which I just shrugged my shoulders. In just 20 minutes, the sales, marketing, finance, and operations staff came to an agreement to solve the problem with the Watson brothers, a valued client. As the meeting ended, Jim became more and more gloomy. "Chris, please stay," he asked. When the room was empty and the door was closed, Jim asked, "What's going on?" I sighed, and Jim gave me time to collect my thoughts. My stress levels skyrocketed, and I felt like I was on the verge of a heart attack. I was solving personal problems not related to work. When Jim asked if it had anything to do with the kids, I shook my head, feeling emotional. After a pause, I finally said, "It's about Lori. An hour ago, I was sure she was having an affair. I feel stupid right now because I think I figured it out. I'm waiting for a confirmation call." Jim grinned and shook his head. "You're being unreasonable. Lori is devoted to you and will never betray your trust. Stop worrying about groundless thoughts and go," he advised. Anne, who had looked worried before, now smiled as I passed her desk. "It's good to see you the same, Chris." After quickly checking for urgent emails, I pressed the play button to listen to the voicemail. Sam Jennings answered my call. "Hi, Chris, it's good to hear from you. We did not seriously consider the idea of paying directly and accumulating bonus points. I did a little research, and although it can save us about $5,000 a year, there is a chance that it will cost us 10 times more in the end. I agree with you. This will damage employee morale. I am grateful for your understanding. I hope this information will be useful," Sam concluded. As soon as he finished his sentence, the photo of Lori on my desktop flew across the office, smashing into pieces against the wall. I quickly assembled the computer and put it in my briefcase. Anne stood in the doorway of my office, her gaze darting between the broken photo on the floor and me. "Anne," I called, "I've had enough for today. Get in touch only if absolutely necessary. If Lori calls, tell her that I'm in a meeting and unavailable." I left without waiting for an answer. It was a hard day's work.
While Chris started his Friday morning early, I felt entitled to end the day at lunch and go to the gym an hour earlier than usual. I felt a little playful and was in the mood for mischief. For cardio training, I chose the Stairmaster Stepper, sitting in a comfortable seat opposite 3 fraternity boys running on treadmills. The realization that these young people were admiring my figure in a swimsuit from behind while I was climbing the stairs made me feel excited. While I was thinking about possible scenarios with these 3 college athletes, my mind began to sink into dreams. There was no doubt that my personal life was unusual. Chris and I maintained physical intimacy 3 or 4 times a week, and I experienced climaxing 2 or sometimes 3 times for each meeting. An important aspect of our intimate moments was the variety in bed. Besides, all my thoughts were on the upcoming trip to Charlotte. I had already finished all the preparations, and I had a busy schedule ahead of me. The meetings were supposed to start 2 hours after my arrival. I had a lot of work to do until I left home at noon on Friday, and the only respite was the evenings I spent with Steve. My working days will be filled with meetings, some of which will be related to him, and I will devote my nights to enjoying his company in bed. I expected the upcoming nights to be luxurious. I've reached the point where I've stopped feeling guilty about my almost year-long affair with Steve. The classes we participated in were very explicit. I couldn't bring myself to involve my devoted husband in what we were doing in bed with Steve. It became my secret, the existence of which I did not even know, despite the fact that I led a full-fledged life as a proud wife, mother, friend, and successful professional. Communicating with Steve allowed me to experience a new primal desire that was completely hidden from my daily life. The realization of this vicious desire came unexpectedly during a business trip to Cleveland. Steve has booked a suite for us so that we can work on projects outside of business hours, preparing for upcoming meetings. After finishing the preparations, Steve suggested that we go out for dinner. But I found that I needed another 30 minutes to complete some business for other clients. Since my laptop was running out of battery, Steve kindly offered me his own. I finished my work quickly, and not feeling particularly hungry, decided to check the delivery status of the goods on the way to our house using Google. After waiting for the site to appear on the screen, I was stunned to find a number of links directing me to sites. I hesitantly clicked on the first link. The videos were graphic and showed how women dominate in bed with men. I was surprised to learn that Steve is passionate about this kind of content. Confused at first, I found that after watching a few videos, I got turned on. I joined our group for a drink, but then I left. "Excuse me, I'll order dinner through the room service," I said, barely touching my food while I visited several femdom sites on my iPad, watching various videos. I've seen a woman commit outright acts. Chris coped well with the task of making love and was ready to push the boundaries. Although the sensations were pleasant, I doubted that my usually courageous husband would tolerate the explicit expressions used by the woman in the video. Coming out of my reverie, I realized that it was time to finish my classes on the Stairmaster simulator. Thoughts flashed through my head about the emails I had exchanged with Steve and the 3 young men who were watching my movements. Feeling a strong attack of aggression, I hurried home to freshen up and take a shower before dinner. When I returned home on Friday evening, I found Lori visibly upset. "Where have you been?" "What's the matter?" she asked. He apologized and replied, "Sorry, I was busy at work and lost track of time." I expressed my disappointment. "I sent you 6 messages and left you 3 voicemails. Why couldn't you at least answer?" He expressed regret again, explaining that he'd forgotten to turn on the phone.
All I wanted to do was leave the office and go home. Lori began to relax a little and noticed, "I've already eaten, but your dinner is probably overcooked. It won't be very appetizing." I shrugged casually and replied, "No problem. I'll pick up Chinese food on the way back in a few minutes." As I was leaving, Lori was thinking about something. She sighed and wished me good night. After waiting an hour to make sure that Lori was asleep, I went into her office and took her laptop. Before I moved it to my office, I checked the notebook in the top center drawer of Lori's desk. At her workplace, passwords for email and other work programs had to be changed monthly so as not to forget them. Lori diligently wrote down each new password in a notebook and was not allowed to use the same password for a year. It took me less than 30 minutes to find what I was looking for. The emails were grouped in a folder called Steve Miller. Among the letters that caught my attention were mixed with business messages. As I delved into months of private correspondence, I was struck by the scale of Steve and Lauren's moral degradation and debauchery. In their frankly explicit emails, they vividly described debauchery, and each new detail was like a knife stabbing into my body. 2 months earlier, Steve had sent an email with the URL he had created. Lori's letter informed her that all their videos are stored on a secure site, are not subject to disclosure, and are protected by a password provided by Steve. When I visited the site, I was ready for sad revelations based on the disturbing content of their previous letters. To my amazement, the result was not what I expected. Seeing my wife as a co-star in every video was a nightmarish ordeal, but it became an undeniable proof of her deplorable actions. Glancing at my watch and realizing that it was still a little before midnight, I thought about the tumultuous turn my life had taken in the few hours that I was trying to book a hotel room for our upcoming trip. It was a dreary weekend.
On Saturday, while I was running around the city, Chris was doing his usual things in the yard. Despite the opportunity to hire a lawn care service, Chris was proud to personally take care of our yard. Our usual late lunch was postponed. Chris continued to work in the yard until almost evening, and then he quickly ate a tuna salad sandwich and fell asleep. Monday morning was even more disappointing. Chris continued to look for new tasks to occupy himself in the yard. I was surprised when Lowe's store delivered the supplies at the end of the day, and soon after they left Butler's nursery, 3 new apple trees arrived. "Chris, what's going on here? We talked about adding more apple trees to the backyard. I'm also going to triple the hop crop and bring out 2 new varieties for my India Pale Ales. When are you going to finish all this?" Chris replied, "I'm digging holes for trees today and I'll plant them first thing in the morning. Tomorrow afternoon I'm going to build trellises for hops and plant them while you're gone next week," Chris explained. Feeling annoyed, I asked, "Are you going to spend some time with your wife this weekend?" "I'll be gone for most of the next week, and since you didn't talk about any plans, I thought you wanted to save up money for the trip." Chris's answer took me by surprise, and I felt a twinge of guilt for a moment. But after making sure that my secret about Charlotte was safe, I replied, "I'm booking a table for dinner. Please be ready to leave in the evening." An hour before my scheduled departure, I became worried when Chris came into the house and complained of back pain. "Chris, is there anything I can do to help?" I asked. "No, just cancel the order. Let's eat pizza instead," he replied. Wanting to please my husband, I complied with his request, ordered a pizza, and brought it along with India Pale Ale from a local brewery, one of his favorite beers. When I returned with pizza and beer, I was amazed at what I found. Chris was already in bed and fast asleep. Sunday turned out to be no less difficult. I was hoping to enjoy Chris's famous morning pleasures, but he got up early, an hour before I woke up, and by the time I got out of bed, he was already immersed in his outdoor activities. I grumbled all day, and he continued to go about his business, which turned out to be incredibly tedious. When the alarm went off, I turned around and saw that Chris was not in bed. Hastily throwing on a robe, I began to look for him, but he was nowhere to be seen. My confusion deepened until eventually he replied to my message. It took almost 20 minutes before Chris answered, saying he was at work. Worried that Chris might be offended by me, I tried to remember at least one of my mistakes. I also reflected on the unusual lack of intimacy on weekends, because often at this time, we went without intimacy at least twice. In an attempt to ignite passion, I started the operation, "Let's revive our love life," by sending a message with a hint. I was looking forward to the intimate moments tonight. When an hour passed without an answer, I sent another message. By the middle of the day, my frustration increased as I couldn't figure out why he still wasn't responding. We often shared the most pleasant moments, exchanging juicy messages during the working day. After making one last attempt, I wrote, "How about having dinner on me?" I suggested. His unexpected answer took me by surprise. "Sorry, I'm going to be late at work today." Over the next half hour, I tried to call him 3 times, but all attempts went to voicemail. As a last effort, I sent Chris another message. "I'm leaving tomorrow morning for a 4-day trip. I look forward to your return, no later than 6 o'clock in the evening." My emotions were in turmoil. I assumed that I would still be upset about how I had been treated over the past few days, and therefore it was unlikely that Chris and I would communicate closely after his return. To vent my frustration, I decided to direct it at Steve by sending him detailed instructions via email. I was sure that my words would excite him, and our upcoming week would be the most exciting. When evening came and Chris still hadn't gotten in touch, no calls, no messages, no answers to my queries, I decided, forget about him. After having dinner alone, I finished packing for the week and loaded my briefcase and suitcase into the car. Filled with anger, I turned on the TV, and with each subsequent viewing, my irritation grew. In the end, I decided to hang up the phone for the night, planning to give Chris a cold and emotionless answer the next morning.
When I returned, I was relieved to find that Lori was asleep. I was not afraid of the prospect of facing her wrath, and I expected not only to resist it, but also to completely defeat and destroy her in the coming days. It was an unusually long day at the office. I arrived early and stayed late, determined not to break away from work, despite a 2-hour meeting with the newly hired divorce lawyer, Vanessa. She gave me an exhaustive list of tasks that needed to be completed while Lori was away. The idea of hiring a private investigator was discussed, but in the end, we decided that the explicit videos that I copied would be sufficient leverage. I crept quietly into bed, feeling that this might be the last time with my rejected wife, whom I now called a harlot, and quickly fell asleep. Being a lover of sleep, I woke up before the alarm clock on Tuesday. Following my morning routine, I took a shower, got dressed, and went to work. Despite the fact that I felt strong emotions during the trip, Lori's first message brought a smile to my face, as evidenced by the steam coming from my phone. "Chris, I do not know why you treat me like this, but it is unbearable. You didn't invite me to dinner like I asked. You didn't wake me up when you went to bed, and you left without kissing me goodbye. We need to have a serious talk when I return on Friday evening after a 4-day absence." An hour later, Lori. "I expected at least apologies and wishes for a good week. What's going on with you, Chris?" Among the work meetings, customer calls, and emails, I found that I was coping with the first tasks. In preparation for the upcoming divorce, I have compiled a list of our joint accounts, so that on Thursday I can pay off and write off credit cards and other debts. All remaining property will be divided between us. Since the house was registered exclusively in my name before meeting Lori, I retained ownership. With the exception of a modest second mortgage, the house belonged only to me. I ordered movers to help take out Lori's personal belongings, intending to deliver them to her parents' garage on Thursday. The locks in the house were changed, and changes were made to the insurance policies, which indicated my children. In addition, I have updated the will and other legal documents to exclude Lori. On a pleasant Tuesday evening, I devoted my time to planting hops in the backyard garden, knowing that it would take about 2 years for the plants to ripen and bear fruit. After a late dinner, I went to bed and fell asleep. When I woke up early Wednesday morning, I turned on my phone and found a series of messages from Lori sent the night before. "Last night, for the first time since we met, you didn't call while I was on a business trip. Please contact me. It can't go on like this anymore. We need to talk." An hour later, another message arrived. "I'm begging you, please call me." And finally, "Don't forget about me. Please tell me what's going on. I love you." I thought to myself, if she wants to know, I think it's time to tell her. The problem is Steve Miller.
When I read the message, the truth became obvious. The problem was with Steve Miller. I felt alarmed, but it quickly passed when I reassured myself that Chris could not know the full depth of my affair. Concerned about Chris's unusual behavior over the weekend, I decided to be careful and booked a room at the Marriott Hotel in Charlotte. Although I craved the emotional solace that only Steve could offer, I knew it wasn't worth putting my marriage at risk. I preferred to postpone all further antics until my upcoming trip to our main office next month. I dialed Chris's number and was pleasantly surprised when he answered the phone. "Good morning, Chris. I'm at a loss. How does Steve feel about your recent attitude towards me?" Chris's reply sounded tired and, perhaps, annoyed. "If you can't understand that your relationship with Steve is completely inappropriate, then I do not know how to reason with you," he replied. "Inappropriate? Chris, Steve is my colleague. We talk a lot during the day." "I know about it," he replied. Chris decided not to go into details, and I took the initiative into my own hands. If you're hinting at our dinners, it'll upset me. I know that you often have business dinners with women, and it never bothered me. I've never cared about your dinners with Steve or anyone else. So why do you attribute your attitude to Steve? My attitude changed when I found out about your relationship with Steve. A relationship? Are you serious? I've never had a connection with Steve or anyone else. Are you implying that you've never had an intimate relationship with Steve? For God's sake, that's exactly what I'm saying. I have never betrayed you, my love. I could hear Chris sobbing, and it only increased the pain in my heart as he begged. Promise me, Lori. Promise me you've never had a relationship with Steve. Of course, I promise. I swear. I've never had an intimate relationship with Steve Miller or anyone else. There was a moment of silence on the line. Chris, are we all right? It took him a moment to respond. Yes, Lori, it's all right. I have to go to an early meeting. Let's talk tonight and forget about last week. I love you, Chris. Chris replied with his usual, I love you too. When I finished speaking, I was sweating and my heart was pounding. I couldn't understand why Chris suspected me of having an affair. The only assumption was that someone at work might have noticed that Steve and I were too close, or noticed our frequent dinners, and maybe reported it to Chris. Realizing that I had barely managed to avoid a crisis, I vowed to cut back on my communication with Steve after work. I made the decision never to stay with him overnight again, and to limit myself to one dinner with him on each subsequent visit.
I chose 3 videos of their activities that I liked the most. Within 5 minutes of the conversation, these videos were posted on Lori's Facebook page. I quickly gained access to the cloud platform where their videos are stored and changed my password. I couldn't help but wonder how many of Lori's Facebook friends witnessed her actions.
After leaving the room, I ran into my colleague in the lobby of the hotel, realizing that I was behind schedule because of the conversation with Chris. Mallory, usually known for her honest and correct behavior, was my friend. I was surprised when she asked, "What's going on?" Embarrassed, I replied, "What do you mean?" She exclaimed, "Your Facebook page, those horrible, repulsive videos of you and Steve." In disbelief, I asked, "Mallory, what do you mean?" Mallory looked at me awkwardly and then urged me to, "Come with me, Lori, now." She practically led me to a secluded corner of the hotel lobby. Mallory took out her laptop and turned it on. After entering a few commands, I noticed that she had logged into my Facebook page. Mallory clicked on the video that I recognized, and after a few moments, my world collapsed.
10 minutes after the 3 videos were posted on Lori's Facebook page, my son Matthew called first. I answered the phone by saying, "Hi, buddy." Matt hesitantly replied, Dad? Something strange is happening on Mom's Facebook. I tried to call her, but the voicemail picked up, Matthew said. I know, Matt. I have my mom's passwords and I posted a video, I confessed. Damn, Dad, this is cruel. I'm sure Mom will delete these messages soon, Matthew replied. It's going to be difficult. What do you mean, Dad? After I shared the video, I changed my mom's password. She can't access her page, I explained. Are you going to divorce her, Dad? Matthew asked. Just recently, I gave her one last chance to tell me the truth, but she lied. So, yes, I will file for divorce. Can I ask you a couple of favors? Of course, Dad, Matthew replied. Call your sister, tell her not to watch the video, but let her know what's going on and call your mom. She will need support. I'll do that, Dad, Matthew replied. What a disaster. I love you, Dad. Shortly before noon, an unexpected visitor appeared at my workplace. Lori's father, Joe, appeared in the waiting room, and I escorted him to my office. Gee, Chris, Joe remarked. I chuckled. They were almost the same words as Matt's. My God, Matt has seen these videos, Joe said, looking almost stunned as he spoke. Her mother and I felt hard about what we saw, but the fact that her children witnessed it made the situation even more complicated. There was a moment of silence while we all reflected on the information we had received. He admitted that he doesn't know much about Facebook, but Lori informed her mother that she couldn't log into her account to delete the video because the password had been changed. Joe looked at me with a pleading expression and asked if I could do him a favor by deleting the video from Facebook. Despite the circumstances, I have always held Joe in high esteem and considered him and my relatives friends. I quickly went to Lori's page and quickly deleted 3 files from Facebook. When I was done, I turned to Joe and asked if Lori could stay with him when she got back. I explained that we would need to talk, but I needed time to think about everything. Joe nodded in agreement even before I finished speaking, suggesting that it would be better that way. After a moment of silence, he asked about my long-term plans. I assured him that I had plans and assured him that he knew me well enough to understand what needed to be done. Tears filled Joe's eyes when he confessed that he was also thinking about getting a divorce. It was a difficult situation. Our meeting took place on Saturday afternoon, 2 weeks after Lori's return. In our only phone conversation, she begged me to meet and talk. I promised her that we would definitely meet. I said that I needed to be alone, but despite my request for peace, Lori persistently tried to engage me in conversation by making numerous calls, sending emails and messages. She even involved our children and friends in this situation. It was only in the middle of the second week that I finally decided to contact her via text message. I just wrote, "Meet me on Saturday at noon on the backyard terrace to talk." Lori inundated me with messages full of gratitude for our meeting and declarations of love for me, expressing a strong desire to restore our relationship. I quickly scanned each message but preferred not to reply. Before Lori arrived on Saturday, I stopped by Bernice's Deli to buy a Cobb salad for her and a turkey for myself. Although I briefly thought about buying 6 packs of beer for myself and a bottle of wine for Lori, I eventually decided against it, realizing that alcohol would not be useful in this situation. I reacted positively to our conversation. Lime juice seemed to me a more suitable option. I put lunch on the table in our patio and waited patiently for Lori. At noon, the doorbell rang, but I stayed where I was. After the 3rd ring, I noticed Lori coming around the corner of the garage. When she came up to me, she said the first words, putting her hands on her hips. "The least you could do was greet me at the entrance. I would really appreciate it if you would refrain from dishonesty and infidelity." I admit that my words may have been harsh, but I found them necessary. We can either continue to exchange insults or engage in a meaningful discussion. Pointing to the place on the table where her salad was, I invited Lori to sit down. When she sat down, there was a tense silence in the air as we both gathered our thoughts. I'm trying to find the right words to make peace, but it's very difficult for me. I need your help. Surprisingly, Lori, I'm faced with the same dilemma. I realize that maybe I have nothing to say. But Chris, think about our family. She will be torn apart. I told you, don't put this on me, Lori. You should have thought about the consequences before you did questionable things. I didn't ask for it, and I don't deserve it. I'm just trying to deal with the consequences of the mess you've made. I understand that this may seem trivial, but it was never about love. I do not know what it was, but I am deeply ashamed. 8 months later, Lori and I completed the divorce process. We occasionally run into each other at meetings with children, but we do not manage to maintain friendly relations. Our children are ashamed of their mother, because many people saw these videos, including the parents of our children's friends, and it shocked everyone very much. Now Lori is struggling with depression, and I hope she will be present in her life forever.